What a level of influence he had. Undoubtedly the most well-known preacher in America's history. So it's only fitting that we do here on the show something I enjoy doing in my free time, going back and listening to a few of his timeless sermons about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ on this Good Friday before Easter Sunday. Let's start with the real message of it all. Reverend Billy Graham proclaiming that Jesus is alive.
You know, they only brought 3 charges against him to crucify him. One, they said, this man loves sinners. The second, he healed on the Sabbath day. And the third, he claimed to be the Son of God. Did ever a man die like Jesus? They first took long leather thongs with steel pellets or lead pellets on the end and beat him across the back until he could hardly stand up. Then they put a crown of thorns on his brow and his face was bleeding. And he dragged and lifted and hauled that cross. And then, on the cross, he said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then he dropped his head and said, it's finished. Yes, they laid him away in a tomb. And when they went out to the tomb that morning, they heard the greatest news the world has ever known. He is not here. He is risen. He's alive. He is not here. Death could not hold him. He has conquered the grave. That's the greatest news the world has ever heard. He's a living Savior. He's alive.
That is powerful stuff right there. As my pastor used to say growing up, that's the good news. The next one that we pulled, because we literally could have handed the show over to several hours of Billy Graham preaching, is Billy Graham preaching that the Lord has risen.
Yes, Jesus Christ is alive. He rose from the dead, and that day, that Easter Sunday morning, that first Easter, when Mary and Mary Magdalene and Salome went to the grave expecting to anoint a dead body, they saw the angel sitting there. And they said, where is Jesus? The angel said, he is not here, he is risen. I submit to you tonight that that's the greatest news the world has ever heard. He is not here. He has conquered the grave. He's alive. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe that there's more proof that Jesus Christ rose from the dead than almost any other fact in Roman history. I don't believe there's a fact in ancient history today so well proven as the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But even if there was no proof, no historical proof, no scientific proof, and there is, I would still believe it, because I believe this book is God's inspired word, and the whole early church went up and down the country preaching the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That was the thing that shook the Roman Empire, that a man had risen from the dead, that he was alive, that death could not hold him. Christ is alive. He's a living Savior.
As I said, we could have devoted the entire show to Billy Graham sermons on Easter, and it would have been wonderful. We chose not to do that, but we do finish up our Billy Graham segment with the Great Reverend and reconciliation with heaven through the cross.
The only way that earth can ever find reconciliation with heaven is by way of the cross. The only way that you can ever get to heaven is by way of the cross. And if Jesus Christ had not gone to the cross, you could have never had sin forgiven. You could have never gone to heaven. And the problems of earth would have never had a solution. Only by the way of the cross can we find our way back to God. And that's why it was important that Jesus stay on the cross. Because you see, Man is in rebellion against God. Adam and Eve rebelled in the Garden of Eden. And every man since Adam and Eve has broken God's law and sinned against God. And as a result of that, God and man are separated. And man's only way back to God is through Jesus Christ. Man had broken the law. Man deserved death. He deserved judgment. He deserved hell. But God said, wait a minute. I'll give my son. I'll let him die. I'll let him take the judgment and the hell for you. And if you will put your trust and your faith in my son, I will forgive your sin. I will change your life. I will give you an inner peace and joy and satisfaction that you would never find in any other way. So Jesus was dying on that cross for your sins and your sins. Some people say, why don't you try to make your gospel relevant? The most relevant message in the world tonight is the fact that Christ died for you. He died in your place. He shed his blood for you. And without that experience, no one can get to heaven. Yes, Jesus Christ died, and the people laughed and sneered. And two people that sneered and laughed the most were these two thieves and murderers that were dying with him. They were both mocking him, but one of them became strangely silent. And finally, this one that was silent turned and rebuked the other thief in the air, the murderer, and said, we're dying justly. We deserve to be crucified, but not this man in the middle. He's a good man. He's the Son of God. Then he turned to him and asked him what seemed to be an improbable, an impossible question. He said, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. Will you remember me, Lord? And then Jesus gave one of the most astounding answers in the history of the world. The angels in heaven must have been shaken and startled and amazed when they heard what Jesus answered. Jesus said, today, thou shalt be with me.
Is a fellow who every year or so, there'll be something that he says that I cannot simply summarize and do it justice. We play audio clips only when what they've said, it needs to be said by them instead of me just wrapping it up and summarizing it. And sometimes VDH will just nail it. Here he is talking about the Mexican president demanding $20 billion from U.S. taxpayers in order to help curb illegal immigration. This is blackmail? This kind of nonsense would never be done to Trump. But it's important to know. Well, let me play it first. Here he is. Go ahead.
If you saw that 60-minute interview with Obrador, president of Mexico, when he just flat out said that we owe him $20 billion, we've got to stop the embargo of Venezuela, restore relations with Cuba, and give amnesties to every Mexican national here, you can see where he's coming from. And he said he has absolute contempt for us. And all we'd have to do, any normal president would slap a 10% tax on the $60 billion of remittances that go to Mexico. They would declare the cartels a foreign terrorist organization, finish the wall, and maybe help out with the military on the border. And he wouldn't talk like that. He'd have more respect, and they would be much nicer to us, the Mexican government, because they would have some deference to us. But now they're ridiculing us, and they think it's a joke. And you see all these people coming out of the woodwork that think the border is over for good and they can come and go as they please. And they're essentially right, at least for the next 9 or 10 months.
That's true. It's disheartening, but it's true. Here was the interview on 60 Minutes with the president of Mexico, and I want you to listen carefully to what he says.
With the ear of the White House, President Lopez Obrador proposed his fix, that the United States commit $20 billion a year to poor countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, lift sanctions on Venezuela, end the Cuban embargo, and legalize millions of law-abiding Mexicans living in the U.S. If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what?
The flow of migrants will continue.
Your critics have said what you're doing or what you're asking for to help secure the border is diplomatic blackmail. What do you say?
I'm speaking frankly. We have to say things as they are. And I always say what I feel. I always say what I think.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? If you took a random person from behind you in the grocery store and said, you're going to quarterback the New England Patriots or Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans this Sunday, everybody would understand that that person is ill-prepared and bad things could happen. People could get hurt, would get hurt. Most people don't understand the skill set required to be president. And that's not, I'm not trying to insult the masses, but it's true. Most people don't understand the skill set of a successful CEO. There are a lot of people working at Tesla or Apple or, well, those would be good companies. There are a lot of people working at Tesla in a very narrow field who think they could do Elon Musk's job. No chance. Hiring, firing, motivating, raising the money, figuring out the marketing. They don't do advertising, but figuring out the marketing, figuring out the staffing, finding the locations, signing deals. That is a diversity of skills that most people, it's 1 in a million. Actually, in his case, it's 1 in 100 million. You just don't have that skill set. Well, when you look at Donald Trump and Joe Biden, actually you look at Donald Trump and any president before him, of all the criticisms of Trump, one of the things you have to say is he has more business experience and acumen than every other president combined times 100. And yes, including George H.W. Bush, and yes, including George W. Bush. Trump is a ferocious negotiator. He's been called mean. He's been called unfeeling. But if you're an investor and your money's on the line, you want Trump negotiating for you. And guess what? As president, he was negotiating on behalf of the American citizens. When he came home from the Paris Accord, having pulled us out of that nonsense that was being pushed by the Chinese as a way to get the Western world to shut down our economy so that they could take over, which is what all that is. All of the climate controlled, the global warming stuff, all of that is an attempt by China to talk us into shutting down our industries so that their belching, filthy industries can fill the void, because the need will still be there. The demand will still be there. And we've got enough dumb people willing to, fairy tales and farts and rainbows, willing to buy into it. And plus they're sprinkling money around to get these activists to claim this is true. And there are a lot of really nice, naive people who believe that my daughter came home from second grade, and that's how come we're not composting, and how come daddy's business is belching air, and how come we're making money off being mean? Let's shut it all down and make our little daughter's second grade teacher happy. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But when you consider the president of Mexico making a statement like this with Trump as president, if the United States wanted to, the United States could collapse Mexico from within. First of all, we could close their border. The dirty little secret is Mexico is happy for their trash in their country to be sent up here. As Trump has said many times, and he's right, they're not sending their best. The people that are the best, the engineers, the doctors, the architects, the CPAs, they're going through the process legally. Mexico is ridding, if we could open our jails and have a bus and then a plane and send our trash to Haiti or wherever else in the world, we'd do it in a second. You've got, in every society, you've got groups of people who will never be rehabilitated. And in this country, we've had so many lawsuits and so many Susan Sarandon movies that we treat these people like kings. Oh, they get this great quality of life, and it costs us a fortune to keep them in a cage, and we spend that money to keep them from killing us. I mean, you talk about the ultimate hostage taking. Your average taxpayer has been taken hostage by the trash in society. Well, if you close the border and you don't let the trash in, Mexico doesn't want them to stop. Mexico does not want to be a way station. That's why Mexico, when they land on Mexican soil now, they push them through. And Mexico wants to make their money from them. You know, there are all sorts of human rights reports on the southern border of Mexico, what the Mexican government has participated in and allowed through the traffickers and through their military. The rape of children, the trafficking of children, they're very well aware of it. They either can't stop it or won't stop it. It really doesn't matter because it's not being stopped. And they're engaged in some terrible things. If we engaged in what they engage in, they'd be crying bloody murder. But it's not their people. It's Hondurans and Guatemalans, and a lot of the Haitians will come up through Panama and make the journey. Some folks will land in Belize. There's people landing in Central America, making their way into Mexico, and then there is that corridor. The whole Darien Pass that starts further south, all of that is well worn now. There is a path made out. Plus, you've got the United Nations that is invested in this program to get as many of these undesirables, some of them traffickers, some of them terrorists, some of them being trafficked, some of them violent criminals on the run. It's a real mix. Some of them probably assets of the Chinese government or the Russian government or Al-Qaeda. I mean, it's not just one anymore. It's multiple snakes with multiple heads. And the United Nations is now, I mean, they're building a rather sophisticated industry of this thing. Here's where you land. Here's what you do. Here's and that's what.
The classic 1942 film Casablanca is often called the most quotable movie of all time, and it's easy to see why. Here's looking at you, kid. We'll always have Paris. This looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Humphrey Bogart delivers every line with his signature staccato perfection. But there's one particular line from the movie that's always stuck with me. One that never really gets the credit it deserves. Bogart's character Rick is approached by a shady black market businessman, and seeing that Rick is giving him the cold shoulder, the man asks, "You despise me, don't you?" To which Rick responds, "If I gave you any thought, I suppose I would." It's a devastating response, because to him, the man wasn't even worth thinking about at all. Throughout the early 2000s, there was a particular man who believed he'd been seriously wronged, treated unfairly and unjustly by a certain group of people. Day after day, these perceived offenses continued eating away at him, and he constantly blamed others for everything wrong in his life, which had fallen into utter shambles. Ultimately, consumed by his rage, he decided to take revenge against anyone he believed had done him wrong. And it wasn't a short list. But by 2008, not a single one of his intended targets was even thinking about him. Some could barely even remember him. It had been so long ago, and he'd been so inconsequential. A blip on the radar. Like Humphrey Bogart, they didn't really think about him at all. Join me now as we examine the shocking story of a bona fide serial killer in Omaha, Nebraska. You'll learn how one man's obsession with perceived injustices and a burning desire for revenge led him down a dark and twisted path, culminating in a series of gruesome crimes that would haunt the city of Omaha for years to come. Anyone who's ever been to their local emergency room knows it's a pretty chaotic place. A bustling hub of activity. Anything from car accidents, heart attacks, severe burns and other injuries most of us associate with the ER. But something many people might not realize, emergency rooms are often where people with mental health emergencies are treated as well. Conditions like severe depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia. ER professionals really do see it all. And sometimes it can be downright bizarre. Like what doctors in Terre Haute, Indiana experienced one wintry day in January 2013. A man had just brought himself into the ER, and staff could tell right away he was in pretty bad shape. He wasn't bleeding or injured, but was stumbling drunk and at the cusp of a mental breakdown. His blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit, and he reported himself as suicidal, having just been fired from his job 3 days earlier for showing up drunk. Hospital staff evaluated and treated the man before eventually discharging him. But just 5 hours later, he was back again and even more intoxicated than before. So doctors started the process all over again, hooking him up to an IV and preparing a mental health assessment. But suddenly, the man ripped out his own IV and stumbled out the doors, discharging himself back into the world. Just 1 hour later, he'd wind up in the ER of another local hospital. Needless to say, it was a terrible day for the man, who was clearly battling some demons. Within 3 months, he'd be arrested for drunk driving his Ferrari outside Chicago. Within 7 months, he'd be arrested for much, much worse. But for the hospital doctors, cases like his were just all in a day's work. The hospital is a place where staff learn to expect the unexpected, and after a while, they've seen it all. One doctor who'd really seen it all was 65-year-old Roger Brumbach of Omaha, Nebraska, the long-serving chair of the Department of Pathology at Creighton University School of Medicine. When it came to medicine, Dr. Brumbach had been nothing short of a prodigy, beginning med school at Penn State by the age of 19, by far the youngest in his class. From there, his career had taken him all around the United States, becoming a recognized expert in neurology and pathology. For more than 40 years, Roger dedicated himself to his craft, authoring 19 books, publishing over 100 articles, and even founding 2 medical journals all on his own. In medical circles, Roger's tireless work ethic was the stuff of legends, but he was also known for being a pleasure to work with and to work for. In 2001, Roger took his position as the pathology department chair at Creighton, but by 2013, finally decided it was time for him to retire. So he and his wife Mary announced they'd be leaving Omaha to move to West Virginia to be closer to family. 65-year-old Mary Brumbach had married Roger when he was still in med school, when they were both around 21 years old. Mary graduated university as a pharmacist, but eventually went on to become a lawyer. And throughout Roger's prolific career, Mary was always right beside him, helping him write, edit, and publish. Together, they were truly an example of what a couple can accomplish when their goals, values, and interests are aligned. But nothing they'd accomplished together made them more proud than their 3 children, Daryl, Owen, and Audrey, who were now grown up and had families of their own. Sunday, May 12, 2013 was Mother's Day. Roger and Mary had spent their day preparing for their upcoming move, packing a few things away and putting some fresh coats of paint on the walls. They had movers scheduled to arrive that week to take away large items like their piano, but all in all, the day was mostly relaxing. They spent a few hours FaceTiming with their children and grandchildren, who'd called to wish Mary the very best on her special day. Roger's final lecture at Creighton Medical was scheduled just 2 days later on May 14th. But when it came time for the lecture, Roger Brumbach was nowhere to be found, leaving his colleagues extremely confused. Meanwhile, at the Brumbach home in West Omaha, a moving team had arrived to take away the family piano. Walking up to the door, one of the movers rang the doorbell repeatedly, but received no answer. Eventually, he opened the unlocked door to see if anyone was home. But as he swung it open, he noticed that an ammunition clip from a handgun was lying on the floor. Immediately he knew something was terribly wrong and dialed 911, and police were dispatched to the location.
I got to check the well-being at 11421 Shirley Street, 11421 Shirley Street. See Jason, he'll be waiting in the driveway. Says he went there to get a piano from an elderly couple. The door was partially open. He yelled for him, got no response, saw a gun clip laying close to the door. He exited and is now waiting for you.
Not knowing what she might find, an Omaha police officer arrived to perform the welfare check at the Brumback home. But as soon as she opened the front door, the smell of death was unmistakable. There, lying lifeless just inside the front door, was Roger Brumback. Not far away in the living room was the body of his wife, Mary. They'd been deceased since Mother's Day, about 48 hours earlier.
I'm going to need a squad here. I got 2 parties down inside. 1 white male, maybe 50-60, and a female party. 79 to 70. Command 70.
Command 70, I'm clear.
Yeah, I'm going to need you here, please.
One of the detectives responding to the crime scene was Omaha police homicide veteran Derek Moyes. Once inside the home, Detective Moyes began observing the bloody scene around him. He saw the ammunition clip lying on the floor, the one the piano mover had noticed originally. He also noticed an empty shell casing, as well as a bullet hole in the door itself. Scattered around the floor, he found several more pieces from the same handgun, as if the gun had been smashed or broken. But gunshots alone didn't explain the excessive amount of blood covering the crime scene. It was on the walls, the floor, and the furniture all around the victims. Upon examining the bodies, it became clear that both victims had been violently and repeatedly stabbed in their necks. It also appeared that 2 separate kitchen knives had been used as the murder weapons, as a different knife was discovered near each of the victims' bodies. In addition to the fatal stabbing, Roger had been shot 3 times, but no bullets had been used on Mary. Instead, it became clear that she'd been struck in the head with an object, which might explain the broken pistol parts discovered on the floor. Further investigation ruled out robbery as a possible motive, as nothing appeared to have been stolen, even though the Brumbacks lived in a nice house in an affluent neighborhood with many valuable items in plain sight. The sheer brutality of it all indicated that the killer's motive had most likely been personal. As Detective Moyes searched the house, looking for more clues, he went into the kitchen and saw an open drawer with knives inside of it. Noticing the style of knives in the drawer, he realized the Brumbacks had been murdered with knives from their own kitchen. The detective's heart almost stopped. It suddenly hit him. He'd seen this all before. 2 victims in a nice neighborhood stabbed precisely in their jugular veins with knives taken from their own kitchens. He remembered those exact details from a case he'd worked on 5 years earlier in the Omaha suburb of Dundee, a brutal double homicide that had never been solved, and it was one that continued to haunt him. Was it possible the same killer had struck again? Just a few minutes later, while still at the Brumbacks' house, Detective Moyes and his team were informed about Roger's position at the pathology department at Creighton. With this information, they knew it had to be more than just a mere coincidence, because the house that had been attacked 5 years earlier in Dundee had also been the home of a Creighton doctor of pathology. It was déjà vu all over again, like some twisted time capsule, giving the detective a second chance to catch what now appeared to be a serial killer on the loose in Omaha. And it didn't take long for the media to make that connection either.
Having pets means you're constantly playing detective, always coming home to another mystery to solve. Well, for us most recently, it was trying to figure out which of our 3 dogs had figured out how to open the cupboard to pull the garbage out and scatter it all over the floor. Well, one day, it appeared the culprit had thrown caution to the wind and decided to make another brave attempt, this time while I was at home. And I was shocked by who it was. It was Meatball, the smallest of the 3, and apparently the smartest. Meatball was the mastermind. He discovered that by continuously slapping the cupboard door with his paw, it would eventually bounce open. Now, while it was a hilarious mystery to solve at the time, it could have ended badly. It could have ended with an unexpected and costly vet bill if he'd swallowed something from the garbage that he shouldn't have. And although accidents and illnesses aren't always things that can be avoided, unexpected vet bills that can break the bank are. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program offers customizable accident and illness plans, making it easier for pet parents like you to help your pet get the care they may need. The ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program has been around for over 18 years and has helped more than 600,000 pets during that time. They allow you to customize your plan, helping ensure that your pet's plan is as unique as they are. Because vet bills can really add up, especially when you're least expecting it. It's simple. Use their app to submit a claim, and you'll receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/madness. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/madness. Again, that's aspcapetinsurance.com/madness. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independence American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
Now, still no answers for the family of Dr. Roger Brumback and his wife, Mary.
A piano mover discovered the couple dead inside their home near 114th and Shirley Tuesday morning. Police are being tight-lipped, but they did say today their cold case unit is investigating this homicide's similarities to another double murder in 2008.
Back on March 13th, 2008, Detective Moyes had been called to the Dundee, Nebraska home of Creighton pathologist Dr. William Hunter. His wife Claire Hunter was also a doctor at Creighton, but was away in Hawaii that week to attend a conference. That evening, Dr. Hunter arrived home from work just before 6 p.m. He was surprised to see his house cleaner, 57-year-old Shirley Sherman's vehicle, still parked in the driveway. It wasn't like her to be still working so late. Not long after walking through his door, the doctor discovered Shirley's lifeless body lying on the floor in his hallway. A knife taken from his own kitchen was still lodged in her neck. As a medical expert, he only needed one look to determine she was deceased. 15 feet away on the floor in the dining room lay his 11-year-old son, Thomas, murdered in the same manner as Shirley. The detectives assigned to the case, including Detective Moyes, worked tirelessly to track down the killer. But whoever it was had been very careful not to leave any traces behind in the house. No DNA, no fingerprints, no nothing.
And all were brutal, horrific homicides, using knives, and the knives left in the 2008 victims' necks, like through and through. It was impossible. Like I didn't even know if I'd be able to look at the autopsy photos, because it's like it was that type of brutality.
That was Bob Mata, a criminal defense attorney turned podcaster. He hosts the show Defense Diaries and just happens to be a friend of mine. So before I go to record every episode, I read the script a few times, and then I go to YouTube to see if there's any videos or documentaries I can watch to make sure I get the names pronounced correctly. And I'm scrolling through the thumbnails on YouTube, and I see a very familiar face, and I'm thinking, hey, I know that guy. And as it turned out, Bob was the defense lawyer for the person who would eventually be put on trial for these murders. So I knew I had to reach out to him.
When you look at the violence that occurred at both of these crime scenes and the fact that knives were used for there not to be any semblance of any kind of forensic DNA, fingerprints, anything. It's unsettling.
Outside the house, however, was a different story, as several witnesses came forward with reports of seeing a mysterious man in the area on the day of the murder. He'd seemed a little lost while driving around the neighborhood in his silver Honda CR-V. Witnesses described the man who emerged from the vehicle as somewhat heavyset, with olive-colored skin, wearing business attire. One neighbor recalled seeing him stumble as if he'd been drinking as he walked along the sidewalk right up to the Hunter's home. One last piece of valuable information came from a witness who noticed the Honda's license plate. She hadn't taken down the number, but remembered it was definitely from out of state and described the license plate image as a pastel-colored sunset. With very little to go on, detectives began exploring a number of theories, all of them centered around possible motives. One theory revolved around 11-year-old Thomas. Detectives learned that Thomas frequently used an online chat room specifically for preteens called Yville. When detectives dove a little bit deeper into Thomas's Yville interactions, they discovered he often pretended to be an older teenager. They also learned that more than a few of the people Thomas had been chatting with were doing the opposite and pretending to be much younger than they actually were. Definitely sketchy. Detectives believed it was possible Thomas had become the victim of an online predator. Another theory for the murders revolved around the other victim, the house cleaner Shirley Sherman. The 57-year-old had been a lifelong resident of Omaha and had been a local house cleaner for more than 30 years, known for her great work, reliability, and pleasant personality. When detectives looked closer at Shirley, they learned there'd been some conflict in her personal life regarding her adult daughter's boyfriend. The man her daughter had been seeing was actually a married man, and according to her daughter, he was excessively violent, even breaking her jaw at one point. It was revealed that Shirley had been attempting to convince her daughter to leave the man, and on more than one occasion had confronted the boyfriend directly. After her murder, Shirley's family suggested to detectives they might want to look into the abusive boyfriend. Ultimately, the man had a solid alibi, and before long, police crossed him off their potential suspect list entirely. A third major theory detectives had pursued was the possibility that Shirley and Thomas hadn't been the intended victims. What if the killer had been looking for Dr. William or Dr. Claire Hunter? Perhaps it was a former patient or colleague holding a grudge. But when detectives asked Dr. Hunter if he knew anyone who'd want to harm him, he couldn't think of a single person.
Do you have any idea who or why somebody would do something like this?
Honestly, I've been just racking my brain. I mean, we live a very peaceful existence, almost ridiculously simple.
Although Dr. Hunter couldn't imagine anyone associated with Creighton wishing to do him harm, it was still a lead detectives pursued. The number of patients who might hold a grudge against a doctor was potentially endless. The only seemingly solid lead they found was a former Russian doctor who they discovered had some serious beef with the pathology department, even threatening to sue the university. However, after some rather extensive investigation into that suspect, the lead never panned out. Because the double homicide in Dundee had become such a high-profile case, the FBI offered to create a psychological profile of the killer. The FBI's best guess was that Thomas and Shirley had been the victim of a serial killer. The precise knife wounds on their necks suggested an experienced killer who knew exactly where to strike. But as for who the killer might be, they believed it was possibly some sort of transient drifter. They also believed it might be impossible to find the murderer until they struck again. Eventually, Thomas and Shirley's murders became an official cold case with the Omaha Police Department. But all that changed in 2013 when Roger and Mary Brumback were found murdered 5 years later under incredibly similar circumstances. It appeared that the FBI may have been right all along, that this was the work of a serial killer targeting victims with connections to the Creighton Pathology Department. In the days following the Brumback murders, the connection with Creighton became even more clear when another Creighton pathologist named Dr. Chandra Butra came forward with a chilling story.
On Mother's Day, she was out to a brunch with her husband, and her ADP alarm went off. So they got a notification that their alarm at the house had triggered. She didn't even call the cops at that point. They got back home. They thought it was this back door that had blown open on several occasions in the past, and they didn't really think anything of it until sometime later, after the Brumbacks are killed, and people in the department are like, hey, did you ever call the police about, this thing that happened in your house with your basement door being opened? She's like, no. And then she decides that I should.
We all know there are things in life that you have to compromise on, like an apartment that's within your budget, but then you got an upstairs neighbor who blasts the stereo all the time, or going to the supermarket that's always out of everything, but you always go there because it's close by. But when it comes to your health, there is no compromise. So don't go back to that one doctor who uses your appointment to stare at his phone just because they're available right now, or they take your slightly sketchy insurance. Instead, check out ZocDoc, the place where you can find and book doctors who will make you feel comfortable, listen to you, and prioritize your health. And you can search by location, availability, and insurance. So literally, no compromises here, because with ZocDoc, you've got more options than you know. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. And these doctors all have verified reviews from actual real patients. So check out ZocDoc. We're talking about your health here. You deserve it. Go to ZocDoc.com/madness and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/madness. ZocDoc.com/madness. Dr. Butra became convinced that someone had tried to break into her home on the same day the Brumbacks had been murdered. Under the circumstances, it was easy to imagine that Dr. Butra had narrowly avoided becoming a victim herself. Suddenly, the disgruntled colleague theory seemed like the best place for police to begin their new investigation. The only thing that didn't seem to fit was the FBI's characterization of a killer as being some sort of drifter. It's just not how any doctor would imagine describing a former colleague. A week after the Brumback murders, the Omaha chief of police announced the formation of a task force to the press.
Today is the first day I've elected to make public comments on behalf of the Omaha Police Department on the Brumback investigation. Since May 14th, the Omaha community has understandably been on edge, in mourning, and a whole host of questions have opened up, namely, who committed the homicides of Dr. and Mrs. Brumback, and are the homicides in any way related to the 2008 homicides of Shirley Sherman and Thomas Hunter in the Dundee section of our city. To make the strongest push possible towards solving these homicides and to determine if the 2008 homicides are related to our recent homicides, I've ordered the formation of a task force. This specialized task force has been and will be operating 7 days a week with the sole purpose of solving the 4 homicides that I have mentioned. I will say this, I would not want this task force coming after me if I was the killer or killers.
With the new task force dedicating enormous amounts of resources and efforts, detectives pulled all the personal records from the Creighton Pathology Department, going all the way back to 2000, when Drs. Brumback and Hunter had first begun working there. Hundreds and hundreds of dossiers were created on every single person who'd ever worked in the department. Yes, it was indeed a needle in a haystack, but this time, detectives believed they were at least looking in the right haystack. And it just so happened that the dossier of a former employee named Anthony Garcia landed on Detective Moy's desk. Born in California in 1973, Anthony Garcia had graduated from the University of Utah School of Medicine in 1999. After med school, Anthony began his residency at a hospital in Albany, New York. Residencies typically take around 4 years to complete, but Anthony only lasted 8 months in Albany before resigning after a pattern of poor job performance and a terrible attitude had emerged. After leaving Albany, Anthony applied for a pathology residency at Creighton. However, he never informed them about his previous job in Albany. If they'd known, he never would have been accepted. Coincidentally, when Anthony arrived in Omaha in 2000, the director of the pathology residency program was Dr. William Hunter. The chair of the entire department was Roger Brumback. Anthony's time at Creighton didn't go much better than his previous residency at Albany. He was rude, made unforgivable mistakes, lacked basic required knowledge, and had a terrible attitude towards his patients and superiors. And the doctor who evaluated him most harshly was Dr. Chandra Butra, who regularly handed in official evaluations noting Anthony's poor performance. Eventually, Anthony was fired before he'd even completed his first year at Creighton. As Detective Moyes looked through Anthony's personnel file, he quickly noticed that both Dr. Hunter and Dr. Brumback had signed Anthony's official termination letter. By some miracle, Anthony was then granted yet another residency at a hospital in Chicago. But again, things didn't go much better. Over the next 2 years, Anthony slipped into severe mental decline, becoming severely depressed, suffering terrible migraines, and racking up tens of thousands of dollars in his own medical debt to treat it. He also began abusing alcohol and writing his own prescriptions. With his condition eventually getting so bad, he underwent electroshock therapy in 2003, and he never finished his residency. Anthony eventually moved back home with his parents in California, declared bankruptcy, and found new work repairing cars. For a while, Anthony completely forgot about trying to become a doctor, and all the doctors in Omaha had completely forgotten about him. It wasn't until 2007 when Anthony decided to try his hand in the medical field once more. This time, he was accepted to a residency at Louisiana State University, but within a few short months, they discovered he'd lied on his application. On the application, Anthony claimed he'd successfully completed a year at Creighton, but when the medical board double-checked his qualifications, Creighton informed them of the truth. He hadn't. Because of this, on February 28, 2008, Anthony was officially denied his license to practice medicine in Louisiana. 16 days later, Thomas Hunter and Shirley Sherman were murdered at the Dundee home of one of the doctors who'd fired him all those years ago. As Detective Moyes learned more and more about Anthony Garcia, the more he became convinced he was now looking at their prime suspect. Not only did Anthony possess a motive for the killings, the timing of the Dundee murders seemed like a giant smoking gun. Looking even deeper into Anthony, Moyes was able to track down the vehicle Anthony had been using in 2008, and when he saw the results, he couldn't believe his eyes. The vehicle registered to Anthony had been a silver Honda CR-V, the exact same make, model, and color reported by eyewitnesses at the crime scene. The car also had out-of-state Louisiana license plates, which featured an image of a pastel-colored sunset. Again, another perfect match. Anthony also matched the physical characteristics witnesses had described: a rotund man with olive-colored skin. Everything was starting to click into place. In the 5 years after the Dundee murders, the life and medical career of Anthony Garcia continued to decline. He moved back to Illinois, the only state he was still legally allowed to practice medicine. He found part-time gigs with small clinics, and at one point took a job at an Indiana state penitentiary on a temporary license. But just like before, as soon as the Indiana Medical Board found out about his real credentials and history, he was denied a full license, this time in December 2012. Days later, Anthony was fired from one of his other jobs because he'd shown up to work intoxicated. 3 days after that was the infamous day he checked himself into a local emergency room with a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit, telling the doctors he had suicidal thoughts, only to come back hours later even more drunk than before. 5 months later, Roger and Mary Brumback were murdered in Omaha. Detective Moyes and his team spent 6 weeks investigating Anthony Garcia, learning absolutely everything they could about the man who was now their primary suspect. And everything added up, including the fact that both double homicides had occurred shortly after Anthony had been denied medical licenses, once in 2008 and again in 2013. Detectives were also able to verify that just 2 months before the Brumback murders, Anthony had purchased the exact same model of handgun discovered in pieces at the crime scene. But the real breakthrough came when detectives were able to positively place Anthony near the crime scene, something authorities weren't able to do with their previous suspect.
There was a guy, a Russian guy, this Michael Belenky, who had all of the same issues, who was actually their suspect for years, but they just couldn't place him in Omaha. Like, everything was identical to Garcia. You know, had left, was fired, had issues with doctors in there. Women were afraid to be around him in there. You know, it's like this whole thing with Belenky was identical to Garcia. It was the exact same story that they used for Garcia. They could have slipped Belenky's name in there and it would have been the exact same theory of the case.
On the day of the Brumback murders in 2013, a single incoming phone call had been made to Anthony's cell phone. He never answered it. But after examining cell tower records, they were able to place him near Omaha at the time of the murders, despite the fact that his home in Terre Haute, Indiana was a 9-hour drive away. A credit card purchase from a wings restaurant also placed Anthony in Omaha that day, just minutes away from the Brumback house.
The queens of R&B, Escape, and SWV, live across North America with special guests Maya, Total, and 702. Get tickets now at livenation.com.
Clear the fog, folks. Best Buy Windows and Siding believes our prices should be like our windows, transparent.
0 down, 0% financing, no hidden fees, just crystal clear deals. 10 custom windows, $59.50. Free installation and a lifetime warranty included. No surprises, just straight up value.
Transparent pricing means no tricks. Financing? Simple with approved credit.
Call us today, 469-WINDOWS, or visit bestbuywindowsandsiding.com.
Best Buy Windows and Siding.
The decision to arrest Anthony Garcia wasn't made lightly. Police didn't want to make an arrest before they believed they'd secured enough evidence for a conviction. However, they were also now firmly convinced that Anthony was a serial killer, getting revenge on his colleagues he believed had wronged him. And since the potential list of victims was rather long, they believed it was only a matter of time before he'd kill again. So on July 15th, 2013, the decision was made to have Anthony arrested. But he wasn't at home. Instead, he was in his car, heading south to Louisiana. When Anthony was pulled over by state troopers in southern Illinois, they realized the decision to arrest him had been made just in time to prevent another homicide. Not only was Anthony driving with a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit at 6:30 in the morning, inside his car, they found what was essentially a kill kit, a handgun with 50 rounds of ammunition, as well as a brand new crowbar and sledgehammer, along with a set of handwritten directions to the hospital he'd been fired from in Louisiana. He'd also taken a box of rubber gloves, a stethoscope, as well as an official white LSU logoed lab coat. Detectives believed that Anthony had brought along all these items to use as a disguise that would let him get close to the victims he intended to kill. Outside of his kill kit in disguise, Anthony hadn't packed a single piece of luggage for his trip.
When he was arrested, his family, namely his brother Fernando, had gone online, and I ended up getting a call about 1 a.m, and he left me a message saying, "Hey, my brother got picked up in Southern Illinois on a DUI." And I'm like, "A DUI?" And I was going to call him and tell him, "Hey, you know, I couldn't possibly drive down for a DUI. You just need to find a local guy down there." So I do call him. He answers. All he tells me is, "It sounds like a murder case." So I wake Allison up and I'm like, "It sounds like we might have picked up a murder case in Southern Illinois." And so her and I jump in the vehicle and we take the drive. So then we find out, you know, and the probable cause affidavit in that case was very much like the Idaho 4 case with Kohberger, very detailed. So we start reading this story, the state's narrative, this revenge theme, that this guy had gone to Creighton University in their medical school, and he was in the residency program in 2001. He was fired, and that he held this grudge, and that 7 years later goes and kills the 11-year-old Thomas Hunter and the housekeeper, and then 5 years later goes and kills Roger and Mary Brumbeck. This guy was like theoretically a serial killer. That's what they were alleging he was. So immediately I tell Alice, I'm like, we got to call my father.
As far as defense lawyers go, very few are fortunate to have a father like Robert Motta, a man with the specific kind of high-profile trial experience Bob would certainly need if he decided to take this case.
Now, my dad was, as you know, Tyler, was John Wayne Gacy's lawyer back in 1978 through 80. They got a lot of hate. He's like, "If you ever get a big murder case, you know, bring me on and we'll try it together." You know, so it was me, my wife Allison, who's a pit bull, brilliant attorney, and my father, who's also a brilliant attorney. And we tried Garcia because at that point we hadn't even tried a murder case. We had tried tons and tons of trials, but for us, it was a big leap. In terms of being a trial attorney, you're either experienced or you're not. What Anthony was telling us from the minute that we met him is that he didn't do these things, that he was innocent of the crimes.
Despite Anthony's insistence to the contrary, however, detectives soon began uncovering even more evidence against him. After being arrested and taken into custody, a subsequent search warrant for Anthony's home in Indiana revealed the depths to which he'd fallen. Most of the rooms were bare. His bed was an air mattress. Empty beer cans littered the floor, and the only real food inside the house was a box of cereal he kept inside the refrigerator. Suddenly, the FBI's profile of a vagabond drifter didn't seem too far off. As far as doctors go, Anthony Garcia was about as close as one could get. On his dining room table and in his kitchen sink, detectives discovered stacks of damning paperwork. It turned out Anthony had kept a record of almost every single perceived injustice against him. He had copies of his negative performance evaluations throughout his career, along with his termination letter from Creighton, as well as several rejection letters from state licensing boards. It was clear this was a man completely fixated on holding a grudge. Police also found numerous handwritten pages detailing plans to commit identity fraud, kidnappings, tortures, and other murders. Now that police had access to his cell phone, examinations of his metadata and internet history revealed even more sinister plans. Among his internet searches, Anthony had looked up the personal addresses for several other people he blamed for his professional downfall, including a doctor in Albany as well as one in Chicago. But the most surprising revelation from Anthony's cell phone data was that Roger Brumback had apparently not been on Anthony's intended victim list in 2013. Instead, the records showed Dr. Chandra Butra had been the one he'd initially traveled to Nebraska to kill. In fact, he hadn't looked up Roger's home address until he'd failed to break into the Butra's house that day. It was only after his failed attempt, while sitting in the parking lot of a barbecue wing restaurant, that he'd searched for Roger's address and easily found it in the white pages. And although these pieces of evidence would be introduced at trial, defense attorney Bob Motta seriously challenged the veracity of the state's claims.
The Google searches they claim that happened, which frankly were probably the most damning thing. They said that they had found on his tablet that he had Googled Butra and then he had Googled the Brumbacks for their addresses. And, you know, the problem was that what they did is that one of the cops had extracted it to his own personal phone, an old phone of his. And what they kept all the data on was a WordPad document. So at trial, which if you don't know what WordPad is, it's like a Word document, except it's the basic version of it. So at trial, what we did is we actually brought up where they're claiming the information about these searches was, and we typed in not guilty.
While it's not proof of any deliberate malfeasance, keeping records of evidence on an easily editable WordPad document certainly seems a bit strange, if not irresponsible, in what would become a capital murder case. It would take 3 long years before Anthony Garcia was put on trial for the 4 murders in Omaha. If convicted, the state would seek the death penalty. During this time, however, it became obvious that Anthony's mental health was in serious decline.
Just so I want people to have a clear understanding that Anthony Garcia was kept in solitary for 3 years, 23 hours a day. He got 1 hour a day out of his cell. He lost his mind in there. When I'm saying 23 hours a day, I mean every bit of that. And they tortured him in there. And I'm not talking about physically, I'm talking about psychologically. They wouldn't let him sleep. You know, because in cases like that, in cases where you've got a child victim and it's a case that has affected a community, trust me when I tell you this, jail and prison guards don't give a shit about the presumption of innocence. That's not something that they care about. They viewed him as a child killer and they acted as such. And like he was telling us repeatedly that they were torturing him in there psychologically. You know, he claimed that they had raped him. So we were trying to address it. We were trying to get him out of solitary, you know. So we challenged our own client's competency 3 times because within 6 months, he just wasn't there, like mentally. He was he couldn't help in his own defense. Like he could not assist us. We couldn't have any kind of conversation with them because all you could focus on was the fact that they were torturing him in there. And we're trying to help him. We wanted to get him to Lincoln Regional Mental Hospital to get him evaluated and really just to get him out of the jail. And so the first time that we did it, we saw improvement from him mentally, you know, like he did. He kind of came back a little bit. But then once they put him back in, they found him competent.
Despite being evaluated and declared mentally competent to stand trial, Anthony was no longer even speaking to his attorneys by the time they got to trial.
I mean, Tyler, I sat there in a 5-week jury trial and our client didn't say one word to any of us.
To onlookers, it appeared as if he wasn't even aware of a trial going on around him.
They were wheeling him in and he slept through his trial. Like he had his hands like across his chest like a vampire would in its casket and was just kind of like drifting off. Now you can imagine what that would have looked like to a jury. You know, it looked like this guy doesn't give a shit. This guy doesn't care. He's clearly guilty, you know, and that's how it appeared to them. And we weren't allowed to explain to them why he appeared that way in front of the jury. We couldn't tell the jury why he was like this.
It wasn't until after the trial that Bob would discover the real reasons for Anthony's appearance and demeanor during the trial.
Somebody recognized that I was one of Garcia's attorneys and they emailed us, and it turned out that he was the nurse at the jail, Douglas County Jail, and he told us in an email that he was the one that was administering a shot to him before, like every court hearing and throughout the trial, knocking him out. They were tranquilizing him, which is shocking. You know, it really is. I found it to be stunning that the state would do that, to have him appear that way.
In addition to Anthony's shocking behavior during trial, the state was able to put together a very powerful circumstantial case against him with evidence they collected.
In Garcia's case, they had a hell of a narrative. You know, they really did. Like their narrative was super compelling. They flesh out their narrative. And like the one thing that I'm always trying to impress upon people, Tyler, is that the state wasn't there when the crimes were committed. We weren't there when the crimes were committed. Law enforcement was not there when the crimes were committed. The state has a theory of a case. We have a theory of a case. And ultimately what it boils down to, and both of us are coming to our own theories based on the same evidence that law enforcement collected. And that's all it is.
The queens of R&B, Escape, and SWV, live across North America with special guests Maya, Total, and 702. Get tickets now at livenation.com.
The school year can bring unexpected challenges for families and their teenagers. If you're looking for support, Meridell Achievement Center can help. They empower your teen with the tools to manage depression, anxiety, anger, trouble at home or school, or with signs of autism. Meridell Achievement Center helps the whole family see and feel lasting results. You know your teen is capable of great things. Help them today. Most insurances and TRICARE accepted. Learn more at Meridell.com. That's MERIDELL.com.
In the end, after 5 weeks of testimony, the jury considered the evidence against Anthony to be overwhelming. And after 7.5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its guilty verdict. There in the courtroom watching the verdict was the Omaha chief of police who'd put together the task force in wake of the Brumbach murders.
I'll just say one thing. I was confident all along that the citizens of Douglas County and Omaha who comprise this jury would sift through the evidence, would sift through the theatrics, and come to the right verdict. And they did. And moving forward, you know, let's remember the victims. And there really isn't any reason to mention or worry about Anthony Garcia any further. Thank you.
In comments given to the Omaha World Herald, Claire Hunter, the mother of Thomas, was quoted as saying, "Garcia was a guy who my husband didn't hire, didn't say a word when they fired him, and he comes back 7 years later and kills our son? That's not a normal response, not even to anger. That's not revenge. What he did to those 4 people is animal." Defense lawyer Bob Mata has since stepped away from the courtroom and into the sound booth, where he hosts his own podcast, Defense Diaries. The first season covers his father's infamous John Wayne Gacy case and reveals hours upon hours of never-heard-before recordings between his father and John Wayne Gacy. But in his second season, called Tunnel Vision, it takes a deep dive into the case we've been discussing today.
It is a very, very deep, dark story that's probably worth a listen. And you know, and it's one of those things where when I started this season, you know, people were like, well, how are you going to talk about the case? Well, our client never said anything that would trigger privilege because he always maintained his innocence. I'm not going to sugarcoat this and make this some kind of defense lawyer. Oh, look, he's innocent. You know, I'm on my soapbox. He's innocent. He's innocent. I'm going to lay out all the facts for the first time, the same way that I was hoping that a jury would look at it and hope that they'll come to their own conclusions once they hear both sides of it. So my listeners are our jury, and I'm putting out all of the state's evidence.
Of course, we asked Bob what he felt some of the more compelling pieces of evidence were that might point to Anthony, perhaps, having been wrongfully convicted.
We didn't know what day that the Brumbachs were killed. The state's theory was that it had to be Mother's Day. So it was always our feeling that the Brumbachs were not killed between 3 and 4 in the afternoon on Mother's Day, because we're talking about a bedroom community. in Omaha on Mother's Day. It was a beautiful day. It was like a 71-degree day, a Sunday. You're outside grilling, you're cooking, your mom's over. So we start canvassing the neighborhood. And remember, there were 5 gunshots that all happened from outside. The intruder was outside of the house shooting into the house with a 9mm, and no one heard it. Not one person in that neighborhood heard it. And if you've ever heard a 9mm, it's implausible that no one would have heard those gunshots, including the next door neighbor was an Omaha cop who was home, and he didn't hear anything. He didn't hear the gunshots. And we found somebody who heard around midnight what he said it sounded like 3 to 4 fireworks, sounded like big bangs. So our theory was that the Brumbacks weren't killed at that time. Like, it was impossible. There's no way that no one would have heard that nightmare that was going on in that house. It was completely implausible.
But Bob just didn't rely on his gut instincts and intuition to develop this theory. In fact, he believes the Mother's Day time of death can be refuted by hard facts.
We had hired Werner Spitz, who was at the time, he's probably the most preeminent forensic pathologist on the planet. When he looks at the autopsy, what the autopsy says is that Roger Brumback was still in rigor mortis, and they don't get Brumback back to the morgue until that night, which we're talking like over 50 hours. And so when Spitz looks at it, he's like, there's no way physiologically, unless he was kept in a freezer for the days after he was killed, that he would still be in rigor mortis. It's scientifically impossible. So when I had Werner Spitz tell me that, I'm like, I don't think Garcia did it. I mean, like, I'm just looking at the science of it. It's like we put on a good defense, so there could be that element of me drinking the Kool-Aid, or just buying our own defense. But like, it's hard to dispute science. Like there's no rational explanation of how Brumback would still be in rigor mortis.
Just before trial, however, Bob received a shocking blow to his defense when it was revealed that Werner Spitz wouldn't be able to testify at trial.
He was our star witness. And then 2 weeks before the trial's supposed to start, the JonBenét Ramsey special comes out, and Spitz is on it. And that's when he just flat out says that her brother did it. And he said what he did it with. It was like a lamp with like a square base. He's like, he took it and he crushed her skull with it like this. He crushed, he's like, it fits perfectly into the skull where the skull was fractured. So then Spitz gets sued immediately by her brother, like the next day. So like, I'm then getting phone calls from his civil attorney because he sued him for $200 million. So like his civil attorney's like, I can't have him testify. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I'm like, this is a death penalty case. So we end up losing Spitz 2 weeks before trial. He subs in a guy who had the same scientific opinion, but he's not Werner Spitz. He's not the guy who worked on Kennedy's autopsy for the Warren Commission and every other big case that's been out there in the last 40 years. So it was one thing after another, man. It was a tough case, dude. It was a tough case, but it makes for an amazing podcast. I'll tell you that.
Like with all aspects of any true crime case, there are always two sides to the story, and it was Bob's job to give Anthony Garcia the best defense possible. To counter Bob's Mother's Day timeline, the prosecution offered multiple witnesses who testified the Brumbacks were found still wearing the exact same clothing they'd been seen wearing earlier that day. If you're interested in hearing more about this case, Season 2 of the Defense Diaries includes 50 episodes, with Bob Motta laying out the entire case.
I lay out the entire case of the state, and I'm still not done with Garcia. So, like, we haven't even gotten to trial yet. It's very thorough. Like, I go through all the evidence. I talk about the alternate suspects, so listen to it and make your own decision. Because I'm not trying to convince anybody. Believe me, that, like, I call things as I see them. If I think things that were done improperly, obviously I'm talking about that. But it's not going to innocence or guilt. That's going to how the case was tried. There were issues between us and the state. It was a hard-fought case. So, like, I honestly sit here and, do I see a world in which he could have done it? Yeah, I do. Do I see a world in which he may not have done it? Yeah, I do. But that's based on the evidence. You know what I mean? And just lack thereof. So it's a tough case, man, you know, and right now as it stands, I've got a client that I represented that's sitting on death row. So it's, you know, it's a tough thing for me. I don't know as I sit here now if justice was served, you know. I mean, if he's the guy, then he's exactly where he should be, you know. I mean, I can say that. But as I sit here now, I honestly don't know the answer, man. And I was as close to the case as you can get.
By the time of his sentencing, 2 years later, Anthony was barely recognizable. He'd put on considerable weight, and it appeared he hadn't shaved his beard since trial. He was escorted into the courtroom in a wheelchair, and he looked near catatonic with his eyes closed, showing no reaction as the judge sentenced him to death. Standing up to speak on the victim's behalf was Shirley Sherman's son, Jeff.
Mr. Garcia doesn't deserve my forgiveness. Doesn't deserve nothing from my family or anybody. All the innocent victims that were taken. For what? For a job? Who does that? I'm left with constant images from courtroom photos of my mom laying there in a pool of her own blood with an 8-inch butcher knife hanging out her neck. I can't get those images ever out of my head. There's a special place for people like this, and I hope he ends up there. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Victim Thomas Hunter would have been 22 years old at the time of the sentencing, and it's easy to imagine that the academically gifted child might have followed in his parents' footsteps, perhaps even becoming a doctor himself. Today, a life-size bronze statue of Thomas sits on the lawn outside Creighton Medical Center. The image is an eternally young boy playing in nature. At the statue's dedication ceremony, Dr. Hunter stated the statue captured Thomas's essence as well as his spirit. The chairman of Creighton's Department of Medicine told the small crowd who gathered that Thomas's life had been like a meteor. Though their existence may be brief, they light up the entire sky.
If you like deep dives, we're your thing. If you're a one-offer, we might not be your thing, because they are definitely deep dives. And obviously, I'm trying to teach people about the law, you know, and the criminal justice system. But I try to do it in an interesting way, so it's not dry and boring. Most of our fans, I think, really appreciate it. And then we also have the docket, and I brought on my badass wife, who's just a pit bull of a defense attorney, brilliant woman, and she is my co-host on the docket. So check the pod out. The name of it is Defense Diaries. You can find it anywhere you can find your pods. And also check out our YouTube channel, which is Defense Diaries Podcast. We have a ton of content on there as well. We're always deep diving. I'm always trying to give you the lawyer's perspective. So we look forward to you guys listening, and hopefully you'll join the community. We'd love to have you.
Follow The Minds of Madness on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To support the show and get access to ad-free episodes, extra content, and Patreon-exclusive episodes, go to patreon.com/madnesspod. To find us on Instagram and Facebook, search The Minds of Madness, and on Twitter using the handle @MadnessPod. And also, by checking out our sponsors and using our promo codes, you're also helping support the show. We've got all the links in our episode notes. So until next week, thanks for listening.
Hear that sizzle?
That's the wood-fired grill at Firebirds. Experience it for yourself. Hand-cut steaks, seafood, and more. Or try a chef-inspired creation from our scratch kitchen. But don't just come hungry to Firebirds. Join us for a signature cocktail, craft beer, or the perfect wine in our Fire Bar for happy hour. Open 11 a.m. daily for lunch and dinner, or brunch on the weekends. Wood-fire flavor you can believe in at Firebirds Wood-Fired Grill. Now open in Grapevine, 450 West State Highway 114.
Got dings, dents, scratches, or faded paint? Maaco's got you covered. Refresh your ride with your refund during our tax season event, because your car deserves to shine. Head to Maaco.com to schedule your estimate today. Better get Maaco.
Bridgebank helps breakthrough ideas actually break through and remains dedicated to providing financial solutions to those committed to leveraging innovation to make the world a better place. Bridgebank, a division of Western Alliance Bank. Bridgebank. Be bold. Venture wisely.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Texas Live is your ultimate sports destination where the action never stops. Catch every game on our massive screen surrounded by the energy of fellow fans. From the thrill of victory to the heart-pounding moments, Texas Live is the place to be. And when you need a break, kick back at Revolver Brewhouse. Or head to Troy Aikman's Bar and Grill or Guy Fieri's Taco Spot for mouth-watering bites. Make every game day an unforgettable experience at Texas Live. Your home for sports and fun. Check out all the action at TexasLive.com.
I watched some of this yesterday and saw his interview with Adam Schefter. Kind of feel for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, the Cowboys head coach is entering his 5th season with the team. 42-25 in the regular season, pretty good.
Not bad.
1-3 in the postseason, pretty bad. Not why he was brought in here. I'm guaranteeing you, if you had told Jerry on the day that he hired McCarthy that 4 years down the road he would be 1-3 in the postseason, Jerry would have said, well, then let's not even do this. That's not why he was brought in here.
Yeah, they thought they'd found a guy who could get him to the promised land.
Jerry would have bet a large amount of his net worth that McCarthy would win more than one playoff game in 4 years.
Yes, no doubt.
So what has happened in the postseason is definitely a disappointment, and that is one large reason that he's on the last year of his deal. He's a lame duck this season. So McCarthy at the league meetings, doing that interview with Schefter and talking to reporters in another setting, got a lot of questions about being on the last year of his deal, not being extended, and about the Cowboys' lack of activity in free agency. So we have a lot of audio here. Why don't we start with the Schefter interview when he is asked about his thoughts on the lack of Cowboys activity here in free agency. And to go with this, you just need to picture the visual. McCarthy is very uncomfortable. He's shifting and fidgeting in his chair a lot, and it almost looks like he doesn't believe what he's saying.
I'm a big believer in a second and third year jump. You know, we have some young players. We got some guys coming back off of IR that were young players that we're excited about. So we are definitely improving. You know, we're just not part of the free agent market right now.
So is that what Cowboys fans can hang their hat on, the fact that there are guys coming back that are going to be getting better because people keep waiting for the Cowboys to make moves?
Well, I think that, and also there's a lot left. So I mean, you'll probably have a market right before the draft or post draft, and then you got your June 1st market, and obviously we'll have another draft class. So I have great confidence in our roster.
The actual comment of we are definitely getting better, that's got a lot of people talking because most look at what they've lost and what they've added and can't make that work.
Yeah. And outside of DeMarvion Overshown, who was on IR who's coming back?
Mm-hmm.
I may be missing somebody, but I can't think of anyone else significant.
I can't either.
That's coming back.
So like Jerry, he's being a salesman. He's trying to sell you, the Cowboys fans. Don't worry about that Green Bay debacle, we're actually getting better. Don't worry about losing two starters on the offensive line and all the other starters we've lost. We're actually getting better. I know it's hard to believe, but we're really getting better.
Obviously.
Then he met with a bunch of reporters at the league meetings as well this week in Orlando, and he was asked about having to replace all of those starters, and he talked about his Green Bay experience and said he was basically used to this.
You know, I think as you do lose players, particularly guys that have moved on for larger, financial packages, and the number of plays that they played is now being replaced by could be 2 or 3 different players, because I think that's all. If your roster's built the right way, the development of the young guys that may have played 15 plays a game now maybe get increased to 45, 50, and then ultimately you want to have the 70, 75 play a game player that would, to me, be in the line of a starter. But, I've never opposed to having 11 starters on any side of the ball. We all know that, especially with the way these seasons are, the length of them. So I've been here before. I mean, really, this is probably the first year that our activity in March has been this low, but the reality of it is this is really the 11 out of the 13 years in Green Bay. This was our approach.
So I know what he's saying there. If you are a draft and develop guy, then those guys that you've been developing that have been getting 15 snaps, the next step is for them to get 50.
Mm-hmm.
But do we have faith that they have drafted the right guys and they are developing them in the right way? If both of those are true, then they should be able to fill those gaps. Mazi Smith is the great example. Do we expect Mazi Smith to be that 15 snap to 50 snap guy this year, and that he just is plug in for Hankins and everything's great?
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions about him. You can cite some examples of either drafting or signing guys as rookie free agents, like in the offensive line. Brock Hoffman may be every bit as good as Tyler Biotish. TJ Bass may be able to play left guard pretty well. Tyler Smith was drafted and developed where he started at guard. Now he's going to swing out the left tackle. I don't see a ton of examples on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, that's the one that is really big.
Mozzie's got to be a guy this year.
Yes, he's got to be able to play and be able to stay on the field at least for a couple of downs. And I don't know, maybe in Zimmer's system where he plays him, it'll help him. It'll maybe put some weight back on. I don't know, but yeah, they've got to figure out something there.
Speaking of Zimmer and that defense, McCarthy said that he's not really worried about Zimmer installing a new defense because of the experience that he and Zimmer had during the pandemic.
This is not a huge challenge, and it's something actually Mike and I have talked about that pandemic year because, both being older coaches in the league, there's probably some things I think we both would have done differently, the embracement of that. So I don't see that as a challenge. I mean, those guys are really going through a normal first year. They're in there early. The defensive staff, and they're just grinding away. They're spending a ton of time together. And, football's still football. I mean, we're still going to line up with 11 players on defense. Mike's going to, still run some of the common concepts that our players are engaged with, but it's really the utilization of how we get to them. It's got to flow, and that'll play to our strength because, Mike's called a lot of games in this league. He has a lot of experience with his system, and, to get it in properly, we definitely have the time to get that done. That's not a concern.
And I'll say this, even though I'm the counter of the Cowboys' red flags for next season, and I expect a pullback in the one-loss record, if there are two guys that I would trust to install a new defense and to get it done by September, it would be McCarthy and Zimmer with all that experience. I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah, I think the system will be fine. And in some ways, I think just with, strategy, I think they can get better against the run.
Mm-hmm. What about his contract situation? This is the other area he's getting a lot of questions about, being in the last year of his deal. Jerry has not extended him, and McCarthy says it does not change his approach.
I think the reality of coaching in this league, if you look at the immediate focus, the approach is always the same. We're all given an excellent opportunity to coach, 2024. Dallas Cowboys, and no one's more engaged in that than we are. So the financial component, everybody's different in that realm, but regardless of where you're on a contract. So yeah, I don't see it as more pressure. I think it's just the reality of our industry. I mean, that's what it is. So those are business decisions, and those are really personal, and frankly, because we are subcontractors when it comes to the financial component of it. But I think you can't lose sight too of the big picture. I know this has always been my approach, because make no bones about it, I am extremely blessed to be here, and I'm very much engaged where my feet are, and the opportunities I've had personally, I'm very blessed. So I never lose sight of that. So that's always been my big picture approach. And now when I look at the younger coaches, I worry more about them than I do about myself, because I know where I am in my career. But the reality of it is, if you don't take the same approach every year, you're really looking at it the wrong way.
That's why I feel for him. He's already getting questions about that in March.
Right. Now, they're valid, and it's probably valid that Jerry has not extended him. Going back to what I said at the beginning of this segment, there's no way Jerry thought 4 years in McCarthy would have produced one playoff win. And all the grief that Dan Quinn seems to have taken as he headed off to Washington about that defensive performance against Green Bay, what about that offensive performance?
Yeah, they were bad too.
Dak is taking most of the heat for that, and he should take a lot of heat, but what about McCarthy's role in how bad the offense was that day?
Yeah, it was really bad, both sides. And the thing is, I understand it too, and there's a growing debate on this station. They really got into it on the Hardline yesterday, and I think it's a really good one. What is the value of going 12-5? Is there no value in that at all? I think there is some. I'm kind of with Bob. I think you can't just dismiss how tough that is to do 3 years in a row. And it hasn't brought you anything in the postseason, and everyone gets ticked about that, and I understand it. But I do stand up from McCarthy in that he's only responsible for his time. It doesn't have anything to do with the failures of 25 years before that.
I would say there is definitely value in going 12-5 3 years in a row. It's better than going 5-12 3 years in a row. But I would say that it's very empty when you have that 12-5 advantage going into the playoffs, whatever it's given you, a good seed, home field advantage, and you get your doors blown by a team that you were a touchdown favorite to beat at home.
I know.
That just the regular seasons don't correlate to what we've seen in the postseasons, which is why most people look at 12-5 and think that's a really empty 12-5. Sure, it's hard to win 12 games in the NFL, no doubt about it. But it would indicate that it's a very thin quality, those wins, when you can't translate it to postseason success.
I know, but if you just evaluate it on that's a big body of work, September through whatever it is, early January, and you've done that 3 years in a row, you could make the case for you are getting close, you're getting closer, and now how it relates to what's happened in free agency, I think is what contradicts that. That makes you think that, yeah, you can say all you want about draft and develop, but it's almost a contradiction by the organization. You've done that 3 years in a row, but you have let guys walk out the door that you know could help you, like Jonathan Hankins, that wouldn't have been that much more expensive. A few other guys here and there, I guess you can make it. I understand the Tyron Smith thing, but I think you can make a case for that. And boy, this is going to be tested. His ability to identify talent and Will McClay's ability to identify talent. If these guys are ready to play in their second and third year, then I think you got a chance to go 12-5 again. If not, man, you're looking at 8-8 frustration, and everyone gets blown out the door.
Well, and what does 12-5 mean? I guess it, in a way, goes back to our conversation yesterday about Jerry and Steven just wanting to keep the Cowboys good.
Yeah, to them, it's great.
and then in the playoffs they're not good, it's very thin to me, I guess, is how I feel about these 12-5 seasons. It's good.
No,
but what does it mean when you fall apart in big games? Does it mean that 12-5 is very hollow and done with mirrors and whatever other cliche you want to throw out? Because there's no substance there if you melt in every big game.
Yeah, in the biggest game, the playoff, but they've won big games. They've beaten Philadelphia. They've won games that mattered in the regular season. Not the biggest. We all saw them get hammered by San Francisco, the Buffalo game.
Mm-hmm.
I understand this season has plenty of warts. In the last 3 years, there's warts within those 12-5 seasons. But
sounds like you're coming back around.
No, I'm just.
Slowly
I'm trying to
coming
be fair
back
here.
around.
I'm trying to be fair. I'm not trying to be the right-wing talk show host who says the same thing every day. I'm just saying I think there's some nuance, and to me there is some value in it. 12-5 for 3 straight years, but I admit I don't know exactly what that is, because I know that's very difficult to do. Only, as Bob said yesterday, only Kansas City has done it.
So what's the difference between Kansas City and Dallas then?
Well, I like their quarterback better.
Their coach?
I like their head coach better. I think Andy Reid is just tremendous. And
so all the Cowboys have to do is go out and get Mahomes and Reid.
Yeah, that's
everything
all
will
you
be
gotta
great.
do. I mean, that's the way they did it. There's other ways to do it. I mean, San Francisco has a different plan, and yeah, I mean that's it. Though is I do think you can make a case where you're getting closer, but at the same time, now with these free agent losses, no, this was before free agency, but now with these free agent losses, as I've said the last 2 weeks, I think that illustrates you were getting closer. Your best chances were the last 2 years.
And I would say that Green Bay game tells you all you need to know about getting closer. Because that day they were as far they were as far from contending as they've been in the last 10 years.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's a
yeah, I mean, in any opportunity, I think, to get
something right.
I'm all for. I mean, I know people are probably going to worry about the game slowing down, but I don't know that adding one more challenge in, 2 or 3 minutes is going to be that big of a deal.
And the one that seems to be the most controversial, the NFL has banned the hip drop tackle this year. Now, that's a term I didn't hear until like 2 years ago, and definitely after the Cowboy 49er playoff game of a year ago where Tony Pollard broke his leg from a hip drop tackle. And that's kind of what got the conversation going. Nothing was changed last offseason, and this year they make the change. And you get people upset that, you can't tackle anymore, you can't do this. Well, it's one of those tackles, and if you want to pair it with the horse collar tackle that was banned in like 05 or 06, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Like it's a technique that's used because the defender gets beat. The horse collar, you're behind the guy and you're trying to catch up. The same with the hip drop tackle. Like your speed is not using your speed in your favor. You're doing anything you can to grab onto a guy, drop your weight, and then bring him down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that every single time it's because you get beat. Like I saw some of the plays where like an end is going around and trying to catch a running back in the backfield from behind, but still the end result's the same where, yeah, you're using all of your weight to collapse on their legs. And Bob has really been a Sherpa for me on this front, I think, because he's talked about it quite a bit. And I've agreed with every single one of his points. I think he's laid it out perfectly that, yeah, it's different. It's going to be different for defenders. But like you said, with horse collars and like they've, changed rules in the past where you can't obliterate a guy helmet to helmet, like defenders will adjust and then we'll move on and it'll still be football. I know the immediate reaction to this thing is what you teased. Put skirts on them. We're playing flag football.
You're
or whatever,
seeing
but
a lot of that.
There's still so many ways you can bring down a ball carrier, and overall the game is not going to look that different. Like I don't know how much we're going to watch an NFL game and be like, man, I wish it wasn't 60-58 right now. If they could hip drop tackle, it might be a little better.
And also, I just want to say, like, I think this past year, Mahomes was a victim of it.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Andrews was a victim of it. So
Yeah.
I think when you have big names like that start going, I mean, it was the same thing with the horse collar, too. As you mentioned, Mino, Tony Pollard suffered from this as well, which, the horse collar obviously happened because of the T.O. injury when he was with the Cowboys, or when he was with the Eagles against the Cowboys. So, it's just when you have big names like that going down, I think it really raises flags.
Yeah, the league has said that the injury rates for hip drop tackles are 20 to 25% more than just other types of tackles. And it is going
Was it percent or times? Do you remember, Saad?
Jory Epstein wrote, leagues felt strongly about this after data showed 20 to 25 times injury
Let's
rate.
say because times is a lot higher than percent. So, yeah, it's a big deal.
It's going to be hard to police just because a lot of them are bang bang, and it especially compared to the horse collar. Now, if somebody gets dragged down by the back of their jersey, you can tell right away that's in space. Throw a flag immediately. Now, with this one, it might be a little bit more difficult, and I think some of them will be let go. Like if somebody gets hurt, there's an obvious one. The ones we mentioned, the Mark Andrews, the Tony Pollard, obviously that's a penalty, but there will be a few during the course of a game where it might be questionable. The player doesn't get hurt. I think those are let go. I think it's just the more egregious. Okay, that's definitely, picked his weight up, landed on him. I guess you can still land on a player's hip, but you can't just go dead weight on him to bring him down.
And I think that's what a lot of people who are, again, opposing this are saying, to play Chris Tanev's advocate like that.
Devils, yeah, okay.
Is that you're just adding more subjectivity to the officiating of the game in a space where already it's riddled with so many subjective calls that we police like crazy on Monday morning. Like, man, I feel like that guy got that wrong. I feel like that guy got that wrong. What is a catch? There's so many things that we say these refs are just having to make extremely subjective calls during bang-bang plays, and now we're adding to their play. But, again, the league is always going to protect Mahomes. They're going to protect the people that bring eyeballs. And, yeah, if there is some play out there that is head and shoulders above all other ones as far as danger involved, they're going to police that. And, again, I don't think we're going to notice that big of a difference when it comes to your everyday game. I really don't.
I think so, too. I know there's defensive players today that are really upset about this. It might be weird when we see the penalty called for the first time, especially if it's on the team that you root for, and then you're going to get upset and like, oh, this isn't the way football is anymore. But at least the NFL is very progressive with their rule changes. I mean, we even saw a few years ago they went to you could challenge pass interference calls.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of that, but they're willing to try things to try to make either one, the game more enjoyable, or two, player safety. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Like you said, you're protecting the star players. You're making you go to the games to see the players that you enjoy, the superstar players. And if they're out because of some tackle that could be avoided, then they're going to do this type of thing. Now, the defensive players, it's funny seeing some tweets today. J.J. Watt tweeted out, just fast forward to the belts and flags on him.
Oh, God.
So he was one of those. Javon Holland of the Dolphins tweeted, breaking news, tackles banned.
Yeah, you know what the other one was that got people real up in arms was landing full body weight on a ball carrier. That was another one where people were getting upset. And it's, again, there's so many ways you can bring a person down without leaving your feet and landing, 325 pounds on a quarterback. Like, there's just a lot of ways. And I know that, there's probably people that have played high levels of football hearing that and go, well, that's really easy for you to say from here. But I feel like just using your eyes, we see it during games. We see so many times where you're able to make a legal tackle, bring the ball carrier down, and not commit, a number of these fouls.
And this is making the game better. It's making it safer. They're trying to do something to get rid of, limit injuries. And there's people out there that watch the game that just don't like change. There's people that didn't like the horse collar rule a decade plus ago.
Yeah.
In 1962, the NFL put a rule in that says you can't tackle players by their face mask. There was probably people in 1962 that were saying the same thing, like, oh, you can't do this.
How am I going to bring it down?
You just can't tackle anymore.
That was my go-to. Just get 3 fingers in the
Just
mask.
play flag football if you can't tackle them by the face mask. Now it just seems...
Yank their neck down.
It's just natural. Yeah, you can't do that. There's going to be a point where the hip drop tackle, we're not going to talk about it anymore because something new will come up that we're trying to limit or try to make better.
And there may be at some point some threshold where I say they've gone too far, but I just don't feel like we're there yet. Like, I don't feel like we're near the I don't know what sport I'm watching anymore thing is. And I know that's the immediate gut reaction for most people is this football is not football I grew up on.
Just
but
don't
I'm like, man,
they just don't like change. They don't like different things.
90 to 95% of the time, it probably is pretty damn close.
Like, yeah, you don't. The athletes today are better than they've ever been. This league is really enjoyable. You're changing one little thing. You're trying to make the game better.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
It's just a little hot, a little cold out here to me.
Cold out. Where are you?
Well, I'm just up here camped on a ridge above Globe Life Field. I'm scouting out a bald eagle nest, and I'm going to go in and raid its eggs as soon as I can scare away the 2 parents using an effigy of 1990s Robin Ventura. Just so then I'm going to fix me an omelet of an eagle fetus and then have a side of badger cutlets in it's kind of like a bull semen based sauce. And so,
oh gosh,
just my usual breakfast before I wire the stadium with explosives to derail the Rangers' plans of a two-peat.
Oh, don't say something like that.
I'm just, I'm kind of an Astros guy now because the Astros accomplished something that the Rangers could only dream of.
What's that?
Never hiring John Daniels to do a damn thing in their organization.
Okay. Man, you're still on about that. What do you have against him?
Look, John was an underqualified adolescent that I guess the Rangers hired as some sort of getting high schoolers work experience program or something. And he was just about the most unpleasant, entitled rich kid that I've ever met. And he thought he ran the team, and I got tired of him using all them city words and eating with utensils like he's better than everybody else and all that. So I just had to leave the Rangers and that.
Yeah.
But I do like Bruce Bochy. I think he's a good guy, and I like seeing him have success. I just hate seeing he's having success for the Rangers.
Oh, you need to let that go. Last year was a lot of fun around here.
It was, Craig, and I think that a lot of the Ranger fans enjoyed them winning the World Series. And,
yes, they did.
Of course they did. Yeah.
And that and I hope that they don't hold it against me when I blow up the entire stadium.
Hey, stop saying that. You're a Ranger legend. People don't want to hear this.
I know you're probably right, Jub, but that. I'm just kind of a little cranky today. I just haven't been getting much sleep, so I apologize in that.
Okay. Why haven't you been getting much sleep?
Because the snow monkeys chased me up here to Arlington.
Hey,
You're still warring with them.
Yeah, they've been causing me hell on my ranch there in Alvin and that. And they've really taken that place over. I mean, they plowed under all my crops, and they planted nothing but hemp and cannabis. And they also tore up my tomato plants and installed a dune buggy track there.
Oh, no.
Where my tomato plants
They can drive?
And they've completely destroyed Ruth's cherry blossom orchard and put in a tractor pull arena there. And
tractor pull arena.
And they done burned up 2 of my John Deeres having their tractor pulls, and they're about to darn near destroy my M-Series Kubota. And, so I've had it with them and that. And I threatened legal action and told them I would sue them, and they just laughed at that and threw defecation in my face.
Oh, no.
So I tackled the leader and I pinned him to the ground, but his buddies came up behind me and they pantsed me and drove my old man balls up into my anus.
Oh my gosh! Oh, we're so sorry to hear that.
So we're kind of at odds right now.
Yeah,
because
I would
of that
imagine
stuff
so.
that I just said and that. But I'm going to get off the phone now because the eagle just took wing, and so I'm going to get in there and kill its kids for breakfast.
Jeez.
All right, good luck.
So violent. Okay, have a good day. There goes Nolan.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100.
Where it's opening week, and I know there are a lot of young people and fans in Dallas-Fort Worth who are excited, and I'm excited for them. I know I've been here before. It's not that much of a secret that I've won 3 World Series with another team. So I know the feeling of serving on an opening week as defending World Series champions. But this is new for most of our players and our Ranger fans, so I'm going to do my level best to kind of gently shepherd everyone through this week of strong emotions, and my advice is to do what any man should do with his emotions, and that is stuff it down, way down deep inside yourself in a steel container that hope and vapor can't escape. And just never share it with anyone. Pray that you can die with this hermetically sealed box of emotions so that when they close your coffin, those closest to you feel like they only half knew you at best. So, but we're excited about Nate, taking the mound, and he's healthy, and it's been nice to see him. In practice he has all the stuff, so we're gonna get some productive innings.
Well, as the champs, do you feel like almost like a target's on your back?
George, I don't. As manager, I just have to do what I can do to put my players in a position to excel, and you don't worry about what other people are thinking about you. Your job as a player is just to focus on what you can do, and my objective as a manager and my goal is to always take a group of young men into a season to kind of mentor them and teach them lessons on how to win with character and maybe how to be chivalrous in a bar fight, or teach them a quick lesson on how to dado a mahogany bookshelf for a grandson with learning difficulties. But, just stuff that you need to know. Like how to drop an engine out of a 68 Plymouth Duster as a weekend project. Just some of the things that'll keep us competitive in a crowded AL West. So.
This is Rangers manager Bruce Bochy with us here on the Ticket opening day this week. And big question about your team is the starting rotation. Do you guys have enough starting pitching?
I think we do. Craig. I do. I think that Andrew is looking good, and we're pleased with John, and Dane's throwing well, so I feel pretty good. Look, it's always a question. I mean, you got to keep everybody healthy and focused. At least that's my philosophy. And I know I may look like a rugged grandfather who your grandmother never fully understood but couldn't quit him because the promise of his mystery kept her intrigued and girlish in ways she never quite understood. But I think Cody, he had a great spring training. We're going to be fine on the mound this year. I think that Jonah's a good defensive catcher, and he calls a good game, and he's just quality clubhouse guy. So I think we're fine.
Okay.
Well, and you're really fine in the lineup. Dare I say this lineup may be even better than last year?
George, you could say that. I mean, anytime you got a team with Marcus Semien and Adolis and, Jonah and Josh and, heck, I'm not going to sell myself short. I'm a skipper who looks like he always smells like a comforting blend of hickory smoke and drugstore aftershave. I think, you're doing all right. And then you add Wyatt in, and, that makes things even better. And I just look forward to this year, and I want the Ranger fans to be excited like I am, unless we're going to take this ride together. And so y'all just climb on into the interior of my column-shifted regular cab truck that smells like old cigarette smoke and cedar chips, and we'll let these bench spring seats give you a little bounce as I take you out to the acreage to go stock pond fishing.
That's quite an invitation.
I have a real affinity for the fans, and we're going to have a good year here, so let's all enjoy it now.
Well, we appreciate the time. Good luck, and I'm sure we'll talk to you a lot throughout the season.
I do appreciate it, but this is the last time I'm talking to you.
No, it's not either. There he goes.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks.
Did you like that picture that the newspapers ran of me in that hotel lobby giving that interview? Me looking all Stephen Hawking-like the way I'm sitting on that couch there.
Making your notes in the NFL notepad. Yeah,
I did, George. I had my notepad there taking football notes. I was writing stuff in there like, do football good, do more money, here are some breasts, and then I draw 2 circles with dots in the middle.
Okay.
No, I had a to-do list there that I was working on. It said to do, win Super Bowl.
Yep.
Number 2, kill litigants. Number 3, cut back on drinking.
Okay.
Number 4, start drinking again.
Oh, no.
That's what was on that notebook. And then I drew a picture of Dak with money coming out of his pockets watching the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl on TV.
Well, you're getting a lot of questions about the fact that you've lost 6 starters, but you haven't really replaced any of them. You haven't done anything in free agency.
Well, we're running into money issues there. It's very difficult to spend money on players when one player seems to be making about 40% of the money.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm talking about Dak. I'm expecting Dak to play a few more positions in quarterback this year.
Where are you going to put him?
I'm going to put him all over the place.
Yeah.
If I'm paying him that much money, he better play more than just one position because we can't hire guys because of him.
Yeah. Yeah,
Now,
that's the way it is, though, in the NFL.
Now, I do think that there are many quarterbacks that have not won a Super Bowl who will win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Dak is one of them. He just ain't going to do it with us.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
That's the part I said under my breath that the reporters didn't hear. But we're doing very important things at these NFL league meetings. We're changing kickoff rules.
Yeah, that's kind of
Change
confusing,
those kickoff rules.
that whole thing. Could you explain that for us?
I can, but I won't. But I will now and before. Well, the way it works is that only the kicker and the return man. Only they can move before the ball hits what I like to call and what others have been calling the action zone, the zone of action. And those players will then, as they move about the field, way that they move, and it is that we have when we are looking at how to betterment the game.
You're trying to make it safer.
We're making it safer.
Yeah.
And for the not only for the football players that we have,
right,
but also our players. So
okay.
we're calling it the strawberry short kick. Jerry Jr. named it.
Okay.
Right. We'll look for that as a rules change.
My kids will get a kick out of when they get to do things like that. So he named it, and
well, that's sweet.
My new half kid, she's causing me trouble. Veruca, she's wanting another Range Rover now, and
oh gosh,
she ran the other one without oil for about 2 years, burned up the engine.
Yeah, they'll do that.
He's your full kid, by the way, full kid.
Got to get it. That's unproven. But got Mike McCarthy out here with me.
Yeah, the coaches are out there.
He's out here with me. He's been working hard. He's trying to beat Andre the Giant's world record of a 16-second continuous fart.
That's the world record?
Good for him.
So that's what he's working on. He's been carbo loading, doing all that stuff. He's gotten pretty close a few times. I'll give him credit.
Has he?
In fact, one time Harbaugh hid under a desk yelling earthquake.
Oh, man. Which one? They're both in the league now.
Yeah, well, that's right. We got double Harbaugh. And Stephen and Jerry Jr. are here with me.
Oh, they are? What are they doing?
Well, it's my weekend with them while Gene and I are trying to work things out.
Oh gosh,
no.
Don't say that.
Well, George, you have an extra kid, so yeah, your wife thinks about that.
Understandable there, yeah.
Yeah, you got me there.
But they're up here with me. They got the adjoining hotel room, and they're still asleep right now. I don't want to wake them up because they would just require so much of my attention.
Right.
I mean, they're real happy they got their own beds in there, and but I've had to get on to them multiple times. They've been stealing all the ice out of the machine. They bought 4 adult movies on the TV, having to argue to get them charges taken off because Gene will blame me.
Right.
Right, she'll think it's you.
But yeah, I got them up here.
Kids do love hotels, don't they?
They love them. Hey, did you see the all coaches picture yet?
Yeah, I have seen that, yeah.
Looked pretty good. Of course, McCarthy looked like an idiot and confused. Kind of like our Green Bay game plan, but trying to keep with the theme.
It's cool to see all the coaches together, though, in one photo.
Yeah.
It was. I was taking a Sharpie and circling the ones I wish I had instead of him. About 10 of them. I remember when Chan was here, he did the all coaches picture. He was in overalls and a straw hat, and he was carrying a sheep.
Wow.
Carrying a sheep?
Yeah, I was so embarrassed. That picture always looks like a bunch of men showing up to the 30-year high school reunion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
A bunch of bald and heavy-set guys. But we have fun with it.
Well, we do.
Yeah,
We're
it's
going to
fun.
go next year. This thing sounds like fun.
Yeah, we are invited. Come on up.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe y'all can share a room with Stephen and Jerry Jr.
Oh, that'd be great.
They'd love it. They'd get bunk beds with you, and now y'all could play the Legos and all kind of games.
Legos.
Good morning.
All right, see ya. There goes Jera from Orlando.
That's what they have at the league meetings, Legos.
Legos. Yeah, I guess so. That does make sense.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the PrizePicks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on PrizePicks for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more.
Hey,
Chris,
Homo sapiens up there?
the overly handsome guy from Sales.
High five,
Here
John.
they come.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, high five, Junes.
Yeah.
Yeah, top again. Yeah, slap you across the face. Yeah,
Chris, we're on the air right now.
me in the abs. Come on. Yeah.
Can you leave us alone? We're
Oh
on the
man,
air.
what are you two sapes doing today? Huh? Still grinding for sub 6 figs?
Yeah, still grinding.
That's what we're doing. Oh man, I just got back from the gym where I was crushing it on the elliptical.
Oh, boy.
Oh yeah, man, dude, I'm a little worried though.
Why?
Because my Bentley had a warning light come on as I was coming back from the gym.
Okay, you have a Bentley.
Yeah, it said you're driving so awesome, and I'm like, dude, I haven't seen the light come on because of that yet. I don't know what the deal is with that. But, so I maybe I'll have to soups take my Ferrari out there tonight to Globe Field.
Oh, you're going to the opener?
Yeah. You know, I don't know. Maybe take the Ferrari. I'll have to see which of my cars Dirk feels most comfortable riding shotgun in. So we're heading out there. He's going with me to RON.
RON.
Rangers opening night. He's super
no one
excited
calls
for
it that.
RON. And, it's probably really the only time that I really get to use my 2 suites out there.
Yeah,
Two?
2 of them.
Yeah, I bought 2 suites
Adjoining
out there.
suites?
Yeah, and knocked down the wall between them, so I could have a big enough suite to stuff all my Fortune 500 coups in there. And, oh, man, there's just so many shawties looking to bag the crisser. You know how it is.
Don't talk like that,
You know how it
please.
is. So I just make them all make out with each other until I make my selection. Of which 3 I'm going to take to my room and line up on the end of the bed. But
Oh, God.
anyway, what are you guys up to this
Well,
morning?
we're trying to do a show. That's what we were trying to do.
Trying to talk volleyball.
I got to get out to the ballpark early to throw out the first pitch.
No, I think they've got that taken care of. I think it's going to be a long-time season ticket holder. I think Michael Carter's his name.
No, I mean the first pitch of the actual game. Yeah, I'm starting.
you're pitching in the game.
Yeah, the skip wants me to throw out the first pitch, before he switches to Evaldi.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You're the opener, huh?
He just says I'm his good luck charm,
Okay.
I was a pretty important college pitcher before I decided to dedicate my full time to radio sales.
You were?
And yeah. So I got to get out there early. Plus, B-Boach is having me out there
No one calls him that.
to give the pregame speech to the baseballers. They always love hearing about my experiences.
Tell him about your impressive college baseball career.
No, about how I banged the Olsen twins at the same time they were in grad school. They were in grad school. I banged them at the same time. And
Okay.
and also all the baseball players, they love hearing about my 29th birthday party I threw on top of Everest.
On top of Everest.
Sherpas can party. Let me tell you that. A lot of crazy stories.
Yeah.
Plus, my buddy A-Rod may be with me tonight.
Alex Rodriguez?
No, Aaron Rodgers. He's always wanted to see a baseball game on ayahuasca. So he may be
Tonight's
going
the
Oh,
with
night.
me and
Yeah.
Dirk.
Wow.
What
Hold
a
on
trio.
a second. Hold on. I got a text here.
Oh,
Hold on.
brother.
Real quick. Let me just respond to this.
Okay.
All right, yeah, there we go.
Who was that?
Yeah, Shohei asked me to take in the game tonight. But yeah, you guys should come to my after party. Penthouse at the Dubs, man. It's real close to here.
Rangers after party.
Yeah, there's going to be so much tang there. George, you'll love it, man. Come on, dude.
Don't
you look
talk
like
like
you're
that.
starving for VAG.
Oh, man. Nobody talks like that.
Chris, I'm not buying any of this. I think
What do
we
you
know
mean?
better. I think we
I
know
had
better.
the team right. It's the Rangers.
Well, you got that right. Yes. I don't know about any of the rest of it though, because
It's all
yesterday,
true, man.
your buddy K Rach in sales,
Oh yeah, what's he up to?
he told me you were on sales probation because you haven't sold anything in 18
Not one
months,
thing.
and he says you're on really thin ice.
Oh my God, I've been found out.
Oh, gosh, there he goes again. Into the ticker room he
Ryan,
goes.
how does he look?
Same routine.
Pretty bad this time. I don't think legs are supposed to bend that way.
I can't breathe. Man, I don't know what's happening.
still alive.
I feel my life fading away, but I'll just do a line of powdered Jesus.
Oh, God.
I'm back, you
Okay, have fun. There goes Chris from sales.
Hey, why does Ryan have cocaine in the ticker room?
Yeah, that's a good. I didn't even think of that.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more.
Rap Sheet had something very similar, right?
Maybe I'm thinking a Rap Sheet. Yeah, that's what it was. The Cowboys and Dak Prescott have a mutual understanding of his contract situation. Sources say with no offers from Dallas, despite him being in a contract year. Jerry Jones says we are where we are, locked and loaded for this year. No indication that a deal is coming. And again, that doesn't really mean anything other than what we've been speculating that could be going on, that they see things now after the Green Bay game. You know, I don't even think we were joking about it whenever Green Bay happened. This is that officially hit the detonator button.
Mm-hmm.
And
it should have. They were huge favorites.
Yes.
And they doo-dooed in their pants very badly.
And after 28 years of the same thing, and after however many years now with Dak Prescott, 8, are they looking at this as I don't think he can get it done in the end. And if we are sure of that as an organization, or we truly believe that, then regardless of cap hit, regardless of freedom from the cap, if you really believe that, and I know the next question is, what are you going to do if you don't have him? But if you really believe that, then what is the point? What's the point of going down this road over and over and over and over again?
Okay, so let's go a different direction, because I won't bore everybody with the very difficult concept of what do you do to find anybody close to Dak Prescott's ability.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people out there have reduced it to he's basically Cooper Rush, which apparently is all pro level and Cooper Rush at the same time. But let's go the other direction. If you're frustrated with Dak Prescott and even this current era of Dallas Cowboys, well, let's rewind it to the entire concept. Like when we talk about why are the Cowboys so frustrating, what do you say? What does Dave say? What do I say? We talk about 10,000 days. We talk about 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the fact that this thing has not been able to get it done since you guys were in college, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Dak is 30. So what you're telling me is this was already 22 years down the road when you've decided to hang it on this next guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the current guys you have now blamed for all of this, McCarthy and Prescott, one of them got here in 2020, about the same time like Biden took over the presidency. So that's how far back it goes. Biden.
Right.
The other guy got here about the time Trump became president. So neither of those two guys who are going to pay for what's going on here, we're paying, we're starting over, we're clearing the decks, we're starting over. You can only go back 8 years. And yet, we're going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. We're going to fall for the hidden ball trick that it's clearly them. And if we could get new fair-haired quarterback in here to save and the new coach who obviously is not a moron like the last one, well, then we have hit the reboot, and we've given you what you want, public. You don't want this quarterback anymore. You don't want this coach anymore. They're idiots. Let's get the new ones. And then Jerry and Steven can sit up in their ivory towers and offer you brand new meat. And we can start the cycle again, guys. We can do this all over again, and we'll all forget, and we'll all forget that it's actually what those 30 years have in common, and we can blame it on these guys. And then when you get tired of the new guys, we'll get new guys.
Right, but I mean,
you'll never understand what the issues actually are.
But you know that one is an immovable object. So what's the point of even going down that road?
Well, so you're basically telling me, Bob, logic, what's the point? Let's go with illogical, because that we can actually do something about that. We can fire this quarterback into the sun.
No, you know, though, that one thing is never changing. So what's the point?
I'm telling you, we could talk about the Plano sewage situation, and we can say, all right, well, we can't change what really happened, so what if we built like a wall of tinfoil? Would that save it from ever happening again? Like, I'm telling you, the illogical thing is to take a 36-15 team and talk yourself into 30 years of blame falls on those guys for losing to Green Bay in round one.
Right.
And I don't want to run it back. I do not want to see this team ever again because of 10,000 days. And we're all like, well, yeah, but we can't do anything about that. Okay, well then, yeah, then fire someone else and let's just keep going. Let's just keep doing the illogical part, because logic is not possible. Like, we can't go another route.
And here we are.
Even the media will go along with this ruse because we know the actual reasons can't be changed.
So now here we are, back to square one with the dog chasing its tail.
Mm-hmm. What's my solution?
Keep spinning around?
It's not spinning. I just told you one team in pro football had more wins than you did last year. The object each Sunday is to win a game.
Right.
If you do it enough times, you are now in a great position to win a title. You have won 36 out of 51 games in the last 3 seasons. You've put yourself in a good position and failed. Yes, there are failures. When we invent electricity and light, we have failures along the way. We have to keep figuring it out, and you keep going at it. You don't just say, like the Dirk Mavs. You know what? Cut him. We're not going to keep running it back with this clown. He can't do it.
Dak ain't Dirk.
Okay, fine.
Like, not even close.
Then improve things. Improve the team. Make an effort. Don't start, now I'm going to really put the pressure on everybody by stripping this down and not spending anything and not even trying as a management ownership team to contend? Like, seriously, the lack of logic in the current discussions about the Cowboys breaks my head.
Okay, but again, you're arguing against an immovable wall.
I don't think it's immovable to say your decisions are garbage. We should call you on it continuously. We should tell the fans that the logic of the sacrificial lambs of the next coach and quarterback, that makes tons of sense, everybody. We're all on the right track. No, we're not. What? Seriously, draft any quarterback you want. Here's the number 1 pick. Caleb Williams is going to come fix us, right? We don't have a center. We don't have a left tackle. We don't have a running back, but Caleb can do it. Get him in here. It's madness. And then we're all like, well, he's never going to sell the team. And he's also not going to spend money.
Again, you're getting mad at something that is...
I'm not getting mad at anything except for you basically focusing your target on Dak Prescott as the reason when it's not. You know it's not. You know that you just saw Brock Purdy in a Super Bowl. You just saw Jalen Hurts in a Super Bowl. You know that he's not a perfect quarterback, but he's at least on the level of guys who are going to Super Bowls. It's a organization of ninnies. They run this team like complete idiots, and we're all like, we've complained about that for long enough. We can't do it anymore. We need to change the blame, even though it doesn't make sense.
How much longer? You're making yourself insane right now, but you know the end result. It's the same thing, and you start blaming the same people.
So you're saying 3 years of 12 wins
is called excellent by any measure.
Yeah, it's excellence. You need to continue that excellence. How many more 12-win seasons with a playoff failure and Dak not being clutch in the playoffs do you need to stack onto it before you say, okay, this is not sustainable anymore?
Well, again, I don't think they've lost in the last 3 playoffs specifically and primarily because their quarterback is stinky.
No, the defense had a lot to do with
okay, so
the
why
Green
would,
Bay game.
Okay, so then why would you even ask your question framed as Dak failures?
He was terrible against Green Bay.
Yes, but by the time he got on the field, the game was already getting away from them.
I mean, that pick six was one of the worst throws an all-pro quarterback has ever
Again,
made in the playoffs.
I'm not telling you he's great. I'm telling you he's good enough.
You don't know that.
He's a second-team all-pro quarterback would be defined as the second, at worst, best season of a quarterback in
regular
the entire
season.
NFL.
And regular season,
Sure.
and then against Buffalo, against Philadelphia in the first week, which he wasn't bad, against San Francisco. You line up the teams that actually have a pulse, and again, it's a little bit of fool's gold. You know that.
Of course I do. I also know it's a team game, and I also know there were lots of failures in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And he was part of it, yes. And I'm simply saying we know this is a team sport.
So you want to run it back like the next 8 years, same thing over and over with old Dak.
Let me tell you this. If you ran it back for 8 years and you remained a 12-win team in quality, I promise one of those 11 consecutive 12-win seasons will be a Super Bowl win.
Well,
because that's how it's done, by the way. You don't just show up one year unless you're Eli Manning and win it all and then go back to sucking. You have to have a lot of rolls of the dice. You have to be on the green a lot to make the putts. All these things are true. We know this is true. Analytics says the best way to win a title is to be a contender for like 5 straight years.
Yeah.
And get many bites of the apple.
Yeah.
We know this is true.
Well, you're about to have a season where they're going to go like 5-13 or whatever,
and then we'll
5-12.
And then we'll dust our hands off
right.
and say, ta-da! We got what we were looking for.
And let's start over.
We get to pick 11th this year.
Let's
Perfect.
start over.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100.
And be a championship contender as they ever have, despite those losses, because of Dak. Because Dak is their guy. Dak is one of those quarterbacks who can win a Super Bowl. He just hasn't yet. And I think this all sets up for the Cowboys to fall short of that goal, fall short of NFC Championship game, Super Bowl championship, wherever that bar is. And I think your starting quarterback in 2025 is Trey Lance. I think that if everything works out, Jerry will be so happy that it worked out and reward everyone. But if it doesn't, then he is willing to start over, and he thinks that he has fleeced the league with his Trey Lance trade.
Okay, so I have a cross-examination here. How are you getting Trey Lance under contract?
Well, then they will extend him.
To what, though? A guy that's sight unseen, not played a down for
Well,
you?
he
and couldn't be a third-string quarterback for your rival?
Yeah, but he is going to get him at a discount because of all those things.
Right, and he sees this as an opportunity to lower the cost by $60 million. You
Yeah.
could get Trey Lance on a 4-year deal for $18 million.
Yeah, he thinks that this is
a year or total?
Total.
He thinks that this is an opportunity. If it doesn't work out, if they're not drinking champagne and holding up the Lombardi trophy, that he can reset their cap math by getting rid of Dak and going with his next miracle.
His little pet.
His next reclamation project of Trey Lance.
I can no longer say it's impossible.
Yeah, because you said last week that things are so weird out there right now. Like, it's such a weird vibe. Nothing really makes sense. That you could talk yourself into something like a reboot.
Yeah, I mean, at some point we have to read the tea leaves, don't we? And part of that is asking questions like, why have the Cowboys not only not spent money, but they're dead last by a mile in cash spending this spring? And it's not that they don't have it. Like, this is an elective. And it's not like they don't have needs, because we know they don't have enough draft picks to kind of cover what they need to get done in the draft, and we're all figuring out how's that going to work. Otherwise, are you just grabbing who's ever on the roster and saying, now you are an NFL starter on what is supposed to be a contender? We know that won't work. And we also know there will be injuries. And it's just like they've made very few plans. And so I reject the premise that they're prepared to contend again unless something drastic is around the corner I don't know about. So what Dave says is not any longer unreasonable, at least to ponder the possibility. The two things that I think would really put the thing into motion and then everything hits the fan would be, one, you use one of your top 3 picks on a quarterback this year.
Yeah.
Now, that's weird because I don't know, by the time you pick at number 24, there could be an Aaron Rodgers slide by somebody, but there could also be 6 quarterbacks gone by the time you pick. In fact, you could argue you prefer that because that pushes all the red meat down to you because everybody's up there taking quarterbacks. But when you talk about Caleb, Drake May, Jaden Daniel, J.J. McCarthy now, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix, dude, they could all be gone before you pick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if one of them slides to you, that'll be your best indicator is the Cowboys took a first-round quarterback this year, and we all know Mike McCarthy has seen that before. Well, yeah, I guess the Rodgers thing. No, maybe he hasn't seen it before. I think the Rodgers thing was before him, and the Jordan Love thing was after him.
I think Jerry is just seeing the credit card bill coming due, where he's talking about how we can't even afford to re-sign Tyron Smith.
But you can afford.
No, but he's saying he's saying that if he made even half of those incentives that he ended up signing for with the Jets, that he would end up counting $13 million against the cap. The Cowboys don't have $13 million, and they already have dead money this year and dead money next year. And even if they don't re-sign Dak, he's counting like $40 million next year.
Okay, well, I think that is what he's saying. I also think it's false on a number of levels. We talked about the restructurability. The dead money is part of business in the National Football League. If you sign a contract and you decide to allocate it like that, we call it dead money, but nobody made you do that. You could have put that money into 21, 22, and 23 with Dak. They pushed it all back into 24, and now they're acting like, well, that handcuffs. No,
I think he's trying to figure out how to clear the decks.
What if there's
how to get out from under all of these bad deals that he's made?
Well, before I get to that, though, the second thing, so the first one is if they draft a quarterback much higher than anybody saw coming. But like I said, if you don't do it in the first round, now you're in round 3 and you're taking Spencer Rattler?
Let's go.
Or is he still a Sooner under your rules?
Did he win in the Cotton Bowl against Texas?
Okay. And honestly, there's almost no quarterbacks in that day 2 range unless Michael Pratt, Tulane, and Spencer Rattler. I think that's the whole list. It's a very odd draft that says if Nix, Penix, and McCarthy are now suddenly first-rounders. Well, those were your day 2 guys, and now the deck is cleared and there's nobody left. The other thing, though, would be if you did a deal with Trey Lance before the season. Now, this is interesting because clearly we would all take that and run with it, that's their quarterback of the future. But that's also the only real way to count on Trey Lance for anything because the day the door is open for Dak to leave, the same door is open for Trey Lance to leave. They are both under contract until the end of this coming season only.
But we know the market for Trey Lance. It was set by Jerry.
Well, yes.
There was no market for him, and so when you reopen it, the line doesn't form to the left.
No, the deal.
Yeah, in fact, Justin Fields is worth, what, a 6th?
Well, I was going to say, he's only worth a 6 because he has a year left on his deal. Next spring, now it turns into money, and the money you're talking about, let's see, I got this together real fast here because I just wrote about this morning. Jarrett Stidham signed 2 for $10 in Denver last year. Sam Darnold 1 for $10 in Minnesota this year. Gardner Minshew 2 for $25, and Taylor Heineke 2 for $14 in Atlanta. So somewhere in there, 2 for $12. I don't know if Trey Lance would do it, but if the Cowboys did it and you could get him for 25 and 26 for $6, $8, $10 million a year, Now you're telling me your plans. You know? That would be a dead giveaway. The draft or a Trey Lance extension by Oxnard.
Or if you decided to flip Micah for a first and 2 seconds and whatever else you could get.
Gosh. That would
Then
make
you know
the
it's
world
wide
explode.
open. Well, all right. We're popping the big man on. I don't know why, because I don't know if he's going to have any more clarification on this than we do.
Oh, I bet he does.
Okay, Georgie. How are you?
Yeah, I just have a guess like you do about Jerry's knowledge of Van Halen.
Okay. So in our last segment, for some reason, I know, on Jerry's tablet,
Yeah, his doodles.
we were
his
trying to
scribbles.
figure out what his doodles were, and because I was in high school at that time, and all my notebooks had the VH on them, like everyone else in class. We just wanted to draw Van Halen symbols. If you gave us a pen and paper, George, did you ever do that?
Yeah, all the time. I mainly drew like U2, The Fix.
Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, stuff like that, because I was trying to be really cutting edge and new wave like.
Daddy Warhols? So,
Rolling Stones.
So, Dandy, sorry. Totally exposed myself as a poser there.
Wrong era, too.
So what we're talking about, though, is does Jerry Jones know a single Van Halen song?
Or a member of Van Halen?
And
No way. No.
Not a
Jerry
chance.
listens to country. My only point of reference is the fact that I know he's always listened to country, and he has a hard time remembering players' names on his own team right now. That's why I couldn't say Jake Ferguson.
Dude, he didn't know.
The other day.
Exactly. He didn't know George. He couldn't pronounce Bono. He
met Bono.
He was just with him.
Nah, he's an import. Doesn't count.
And my other point of reference is the night that Jerry and I stayed out in New Orleans. At one point, I got up with the band and sang "Hey Jude," and I'm pretty sure Jerry asked, "Who sings that song?"
He thought that was a Jubb original.
No way.
Yes. Dude.
Did you just write that? When he's at Arkansas, he doesn't know the Beatles.
No.
I don't think he knew "Hey Jude."
He's Corn Pone, Arkansas, man. That is, if he listens to anything, it's country.
If it doesn't have a jug in it, he doesn't know what it is.
That is.
I don't think, and especially, I think the song "Jump" is really interesting. Was that their only number one?
It may have been, yeah. It was number one for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah, and that's a good one to go to. Does he know "Jump"? And I don't think so.
All right, I don't know if we're going to be at the opening press conference when training camp hits in late July, but somebody will be there, and I'm willing to pay whoever for David Moore to get the very first question like he always does and have David Moore's question be 2 parts, and the second half is, do you know one member of Van Halen, or can you name one song from Van Halen?
Or just play the opening riff, and do you know what song this is?
Yes, so David, like in Say Anything, has a boombox over his head. And
Okay, here's a good question. Could Jerry recite the spoken word break in Panama? Reach down between my legs.
Feel a little bit hot tonight.
Ease the seat back.
Fake Nate Newton doing that. Yeah. Hey man, reach down.
Nothing. All right. Well, I
reach down in between my legs.
No, I appreciate it.
So.
I certainly want to chase this come Oxnard, but until then, I'm going to have to settle on your ruling that there's a very, very small chance that he knows anything about Jump. Or the entire 1984 album, or Jamie's Crying, or anything else you might
What
try.
if he goes, I love Van Hagar, but I'm not into Van Halen?
5150 is really where it's
That's
at.
my jam.
There's no way.
No.
There's no way.
Also, no truth to the idea that he was drawing your mosquito on his pad, right?
No. That takes, some people just sit down and paint, or in my case, draw. And that's what I did that day.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, man.
All right, George. We love you.
See you, boys. Love y'all.
See you, Joe. There he goes. George Dunham, one of the musers.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks. Select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, and place your entry. It's that easy. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code MATCH. That's code MATCH on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100.
No. Who was it again? No, what was his name? I can't remember. Oh, that's it. Gordon.
Here we go.
Music.
Gordon Key.
Hello, Gordonio.
Hello, my
Hooray.
dear sweet invasion friends.
How are you, sir?
I'm great, fantastic, of course.
Yeah?
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
Feeling nice and thin.
Are you?
No, not really. I have lost 15 pounds, though.
Yeah? I found it.
Just by giving up dessert for Lent.
When you turned around and walked off, I found it.
Did you really?
Yeah.
I didn't know you were Catholic.
It's all in that junk.
Not. Anglican is the is the one that I practice, I guess, the most.
And you said, did you
kind
say...
of a Buddhist Anglican, I guess.
Do you give up things for Lent often? Is that an every year thing?
No, I haven't done it in years and years. And this, it was funny. This year, I was sitting at a breakfast place of my choosing, and I realized that it was Ash Wednesday. I was like, oh, man, I'm going to go to Ash Wednesday service. It starts in like 30 minutes. It starts at like noon. And so I cruised down and went to Ash Wednesday service. First time I've been to church in probably years. And so I did it, and I said, I'll do Lent this year. So that's what I did.
Did you have
Had the imposition of the ashes, as they say.
Now, is that something that you are not supposed to wash off? You're supposed to let it just go away naturally, or do you leave it up there for a while?
The tradition is you kind of leave it on there for the rest of the day.
Okay.
And then you, I guess, wash it off at night.
Okay. First time in church in years, huh? But your father is not very happy about that.
I think so. He was never too much of a stickler, which I'm sure was very uncomfortable for him, because I think that I kind of stopped going when he was still pastor, really, when I was in high school. I didn't go that often.
You know, I saw something.
But he never mentioned it to me.
It is funny how you have that evolution because, of course, me growing up, it was you're going. You have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to a particular age to where you can kind of make your own decision, but you're always pushed to the fact that you still need to go. That's what we do. That's how you were raised.
Mm-hmm.
And, I went for a long time not going. And then I do believe that there were a lot of gentlemen in the church that saw the wife going all by herself and thought, hey, she's kind of available. She's always here by herself. Let's see what's up with her.
Okay.
Then it's like, oh, well, you know what?
Donovan went back to church just to be possessive of his wife.
Just to mark the territory. Hey,
the territory.
Here I am. I'm here.
The married dudes were going and being like, man, that one's better than mine.
Oh, even the single guys.
Okay.
Did I tell you the one time?
Didn't he call at the house or
fresh
something?
off of our marriage, not even a year into it, we were in the apartment, and guy called the house, just asked for her like it was nothing, and I handed her the phone.
That's
like
trust.
I'm her dad or something.
1 second.
Well, you
she'll
should
be
have
right
handed
with
her the phone. She's her own person. She can talk to whomever she wants,
Yeah,
right?
like 11:15 at night.
Sure.
On a weeknight. Yeah, speak to you loud, please. Yeah, here you go. I just roll over and go back to bed like it's nothing.
Goes, hey, baby. And rolls over.
No, the rudeness in her voice as she was on the phone let me know that was not supposed to happen.
Oh, good.
That she was not happy.
Yeah, you can't call the house directly.
Yeah, you're right. You just hang up. If he
should have
picks
called
up,
her
hang
second
up.
cell phone.
Right.
You can't leave a
Page
record.
me. Please page me next time.
You can leave notes with little cutout letters on it for each other.
Well, no, we don't want to do that.
Like a kidnapping note?
After church on Sunday.
So I had to start going back, not because of the love of going to church and the love of the Lord. It's because she may have been taken away.
You had to defend.
Yeah, my honor. Not her honor, my honor.
Did you grow up in church, Matt?
No.
Doesn't appear like you did. So
Thank you.
Not really. My mom, I think, wanted us to go to church, and we went to a couple of different ones, but it never was. I actually went to church without my parents starting in 7th grade when we moved to Rockwall, because the guys I met were really into youth ministry and that type of thing. So I went with them on my own. I went to Lake Point Baptist out there for 7th, 8th, all through high school. Went every Wednesday for youth group, did that whole thing. Went to church
that's
camp.
pretty involved.
Went to church camp every summer. Really enjoyed it. I was active in Baptist student ministries my first year or two of college.
That is very active.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden,
yeah, I remember the moment too.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Would you like to share?
You're in a safe place.
Yeah,
no one's listening.
I would have been 21 or 22. Because everybody thinks the way that I am
Play
now.
the sensitive piano music.
Yeah, no, this was interesting. So I did theater and all this, and I was in radio in college, and I started to be curious about improv and stand-up comedy and stuff, so I was trying some different things around campus. And so I was doing stand-up, and I was starting to already have some, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess the idea of you need to live your life this way, and all of us should fit in between these lines didn't make a lot of sense to me. And as I was starting to get into my 20s, I thought, well, for instance, I lived with some guys. Then when I turned 21, I went out and bought some beer and put it in the fridge. And one of them came to my room one day. He's like, hey, man, we can't have alcohol in the house. I was like, why not? We're all 21. He's like, it's just too tempting for some people that may come over that could be struggling with that. And so little things like that were happening. I was like, what is going on? And so I was up doing this stand-up bit at Baptist Student Ministries one day, and somebody stands up and goes, do you think that's funny to make fun of, I forget what it was exactly, but
Cripple people?
No, it wasn't that.
No.
It was some
minorities?
It was something, no. It was something in the Olympics with the nationality.
Uh-oh.
And they're like, we bring these foreign students here, and this is what they see, and this isn't welcoming. And I remember just going, for whatever reason, that was the straw that broke the whole thing. And I go,
when you were making fun of foreigners?
Kind of, yeah. But I wasn't. And it's hard because I don't remember the exact way I was
You don't remember the
describing
joke.
it. Yeah.
I want to hear these old stand-up routines.
No, they were just stupid.
Did you know he did stand-up?
No.
In Baptist settings? I mean, this is pretty odd.
What's up with the cross, huh?
No, but I said in the mic, I go, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, this is, and I go, I'm done. And I set it down, and my friends come, hey, you got to come back. I was like, no, I'm out.
You quit stand-up and religion the same day.
Yeah.
They start slow clapping, and they thought it was a part of the act. They were like, man, that was
some
great.
people did. And I was like, I have zero desire to, I'm just so tired of the judgy, you got to live this, you got to do this. I'm out. I don't want to be around that. And that was it.
That will turn a lot of people off because you think inside the church or whatever you're going that it's, like you just said, a safe space. And it's not, because it is judgy, it's gossipy, it is all that. It is people wanting to make sure that they have the power and no, you can't do this because I've been doing this for years and you just can't come in here, you young whippersnapper. Like it can turn a lot of people off. And I think sometimes people are looking for an excuse to not go, and that's, oh, you know what? That's it. I'm done.
Right.
Or it's legit for some other people that are being harassed or they don't feel like it's what they expected it to be as far as you just, your faith or whatever. So it's a fine line, man.
Well, it's a human organization. Like any time that humans gather, you're going to have people being human, which is judgy and gossipy and cliquey and all of that. But at the same time, it depends on if you find that in some percentage that is small, then it shouldn't be an excuse not to go. Now, if you go and you're just having a miserable time because everyone around you is being that way, that's a different matter.
That's a different matter. And
because half the time I'll go to a place, a venue, a club, and there's always a percentage that's acting like a jackass, and I don't say, well, the whole club business is just BS,
true,
because of the way those people right there
and
are acting.
I think generally it's a positive experience. Like I like and there's something to this, the group positivity of if you're singing worship or if you're all together. It's a positive environment. They try to be very welcoming. Some people can find it off-putting. Every time, especially the non-denominational, you may go on a Sunday like, hey, you ever been here before? Come on in, man. Hey, right over here, we got coffee. That type of whole thing.
It's like you walked onto a car lot.
Man, like I get you're trying to be welcoming, but for me, that doesn't hit. But for a lot of people, it probably does, and it probably works. There's a reason behind it. So I don't know. Maybe on a smaller scale in a different environment, there would be an appeal to it. But the big-time, massive mega church that seems to be so populous across this area, I just got burned out on it.
Yeah, it used to kind of turn me off a bit as far as the huge church, because I feel like if you have a leader that should know everyone that's kind of following them, and if they're the voice that's giving you the word, then they have to be a little accommodating to their members also. And that used to kind of turn me off, but we've joined a church that is pretty big now. And the pastor, man, he makes it a point. At least he can fake it really well if he really doesn't know you or whatever, man. He does a really good point of making it having a small church feel, being a really, really big church.
And I think
we've enjoyed it. It's
there's
been great.
something to that. Again, like the messages are, and I've been to church many, many times years ago, that they're positive messages. And I think even if you're not religious per se, if you're more spiritual or open to working on self and understanding and listening, you can take something away from those types of sermons and messages that you hear and see, okay, does that apply to me? Is there something I could work on this week that he's talking about? And I enjoyed that because I've gone with people I've been with in the past. I went to a Catholic church a few years ago, and it wasn't for me, but I could see the message and understand and think, how does this apply to me? Is there something in my life that I could help be a better person when I'm out in the world? So I think there's something that works in that sense.
Right. Yeah, that's always been my approach.
Yeah.
And I think that I drive some religious people crazy because I'm of the mind. I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm of the mind that it doesn't matter to me what's true. It matters to me what's useful. And if this is useful, that's what I'm into.
Yeah.
And the people that get distracted by, because I grew up with some people who they were literalist, like they had to believe that the Bible was literal and everything. And if you're that way and you're listening, that's your deal. It wasn't my deal. But that seems to me to just be a distraction to what could be the greater cause and purpose of us gathering in some place. And that is to better our lives, add meaning to our lives, and lessen suffering for others.
Yep.
That should be the focus.
I just think sometimes the platform is misused because you do have a responsibility if you're there and you are the head of this to give out those messages that, okay, it's not all going to, it's not going to be Skittles and pancakes every time, but at least you know that you have this platform to try and do some good. And then a lot of things, you let distractions get in the way, whether it's money, whether it's agendas, or anything. That kind of gets in the way, and that will turn some people off. And, you can't make everyone happy.
I want to hear more about the Skittles and pancakes church. That sounded pretty good to me.
That's just the greatest two combinations ever. So if
They're just
anything
up on
sounds
stage,
great,
like
it's Skittles and pancakes
into the crowd and throwing Skittles.
You have my undivided attention and my open wallet if you make everything Skittles and pancakes.
Man, when I was young and we used to have pancake dinners at church, I thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Best.
We would stay at my grandparents' house, and she would know that the kids wanted pancakes, but my grandfather didn't. He didn't want them. Yeah. He just wanted his eggs, bacon, and toast. That was it. But we wanted pancakes, and she would.
But having pancakes for dinner is the best thing ever.
Any time of
You're
day.
Getting away with something.
Any time of day. Man. That's my favorite thing in the whole wide world.
Pancakes?
Have you put Skittles in pancakes?
No.
I wonder if you could do that, or would they just?
You can do whatever you want.
So I think that I cause a lot of people to look over at my table and they're concerned about me because I use so much butter.
That's what it's there for.
The pancakes need to be completely saturated
in
with butter.
And then syrup.
Yes.
Man. And then more butter.
And then floating in syrup. And I watch other people, and they take the butter off of the pancake. They have that huge, nice, beautiful ice cream scoop of butter right in the center of it, and they just take that whole thing off, put it on a side plate, and then I watch them drizzle decorative syrup across the top, like maybe just a squiggle of it. I'm like, that's not proper pancake
the
eating.
Butter, taking off the butter is sacrilegious.
Yeah.
And that's something that maybe you may go to
Jesus
hell over.
at the Last Supper buttered between every single pancake.
Everything, right. Now, I'm not drowning in syrup, but I do use a lot, but it's just in sections because I don't want it to get soggy, because I don't want it to have the appearance of gravy.
Yeah,
which
see,
I hate so much.
I use syrup as gravy.
You're gonna like
I
cut
basically
some holes in the top of your
I don't
pancake,
even do that.
so that'll
I make
soak
a
in.
pancake soup is what it basically is.
Oh, God.
It's a syrup butter soup that has
You have to
little
eat it with a
chunks of
spoon.
pancakes floating in it.
Okay. That almost sounds disgusting, but
Kind of a little bit.
I'm still not going to.
I haven't had a pancake in who knows how long.
Oh, my
man.
gosh.
Now, there's such a thing as really bad pancakes. Bad pancakes are
Yeah,
horrible.
like the old school microwave ones. Do you ever have those? You get the frozen
You
ones?
just can't get them right.
Those
Yeah.
You can't heat them up right because you could
horrible.
have 85% coverage of great pancake. But that 15 that you may have to cut off because it's hard or it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
warmed up yet, it's just,
Overcooked.
you can't get it right. But there are particular places, man, that
It's like eating cake. So good, fluffy.
And some places they do
light.
it where they can get the outside crispy but the inside still soft.
Yeah. That's how I like
I love it.
okay, that sounded terribly.
It's good though.
It is good.
It's tasty.
And now I want pancakes.
Yeah, and then you
Pancakes,
throw some Skittles on top
slot
of that.
machines, Skittles are my three loves. And then my wife is fourth. Yeah, she knows it.
If only those guys at church had known. They show up, plate of pancakes and some Skittles. Hey, you're like, all right.
My attention
Well,
is
see
diverted,
you later.
and they're just all over talking to my wife or something. It'd have been perfect distraction. They would have had all her attention because I'm just, no, there's no one down. All right, put up the signal.
Yes,
That is Gordon. We talk church and pancakes.
Church and pancakes.
That's what I love about Gordon.